becoming infinitely stronger starting from Marvel. Hey! Look who's back for more adventures. We love having you here to continue this story that keeps us all awake. Important note, all of this is pure fiction, so don't try any techniques you hear here in real life. Your neighbor might call the cops. This amazing novel and all its rights belong to the original author. We're just the ones giving it voice and drama. Are you enjoying the show? Prove it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and leaving that like that motivates us so much. And if you want VIP access to exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting with things you won't find anywhere else. Chapter 51: A Quick Guide to Mastering the Purple Cloud Divine Skill. Inside the black sedan, Kingpin watched Bai Ye's outrageous demands without showing any impatience. This was just the negotiation stage. Asking for the moon and then haggling were standard practice. Before the final result, all talk was meaningless. If Bai Ye could truly give him a solid guarantee of winning the mayoralty of New York City, what did $50 million matter? What makes you so confident you can help me win the mayoralty? Kingpin asked with a smile. It's simple. The mayoral election boils down to public support. The candidate with the highest support is elected mayor of New York City, Bai Ye said calmly. And I currently possess a training method that can make everyone a superhuman. Once it's released, not only New Yorkers, but the entire world will go crazy. Are you talking about the everyone can train that Bai Ye mentioned to the media before? Kingpin asked. He had thought it was just Bai Ye being evasive with the media, but it seemed to be true. That's right. My cultivation method isn't complicated. Even an ordinary person could understand it after a day of studying it. Most importantly, practicing this method can replace sleep. In other words, it won't affect your daily study or work efficiency, and it can also greatly extend human lifespan. Kingpin's eyes turned serious. Through Bai Ye's description, he knew that if this was true, then let alone the mayor of New York City, he could easily become the president of the United States with this astonishing achievement. Those upper-class people spend tens or hundreds of billions of dollars every year trying to research methods to prolong human life, but they either experience mutations or various side effects. Now, Bai Ye's side effect-free cultivation method would definitely drive those people crazy. Why did you tell me so easily? Kingpin frowned. Just for a mere $50 million, of course not. As I said before, this money is just to show me your sincerity, Bai Ye said casually. Transfer $50 million first to prove your worth. Then we can discuss the specifics of our collaborative development. If you don't agree, I can get out of the car now. If you don't pay, plenty of others will. As for why I chose you first, it's because you're not a good person. As the underground emperor of America, Kingpin controls the criminal business across the country. The money I want might not even be worth as much as you would in a single flower transaction. No problem, the money you want will be transferred to your account soon. Since you know me, you should understand the consequences if you play me, Kingpin said, but the next moment Bai Ye's right hand rested on Camilla's shoulder as he slowly said, as a mafia emperor, don't you understand that making threats requires real strength? After Bai Ye finished speaking, he stomped his right foot down, his foot instantly passing through the car and landing on the ground. Screech, amidst the terrified gazes of the driver ahead, Bai Ye's shoes, imbued with true energy, screeched wildly against the ground. On the road, the speeding car was abruptly forced to stop within seconds by Bai Ye's immense force. Gently patting Kingpin's shoulder, Bai Ye stood up and said disappointedly, it seems you don't have the capacity to cooperate with me. I think you don't need to eat dinner later. You're not worthy. With that, Bai Ye helped the somewhat frightened Camilla beside him. Let's go home. Wait. Seeing the two of them stand up, Kingpin suddenly called out, his expression softening again. Mr. Bai may not have fully understood what I meant earlier. As the Kingpin of New York's underworld, how could a mere $50 million possibly demonstrate my personal power? $200 million. I'll transfer $200 million into your account tonight. Regardless of the outcome, consider it just to make friends. I hope Mr. Bai won't hold my earlier offense against me. Oh, Bai Ye glanced at Kingpin, whose expression was incredibly amiable, with surprise. What a humble fellow. All right, since you're so sensible, I can't refuse. However, as the future mayor of New York City, you can't be as rude as you were just now. Bai Ye pulled his right leg back off the ground and sat back in his seat, saying, drive. We should be able to have a decent supper tonight. What are you waiting for? Mr. Bai said to drive. Kingpin urged the driver sternly. The driver, still shaken, finally started the engine again. Let's get back to the main point, Bai Ye took out his phone from his pocket and opened the photo album. This is the secret manual for the cultivation method I mentioned. I filmed it with my phone. Try it out and see if it works. Prove I'm not lying. Looking at the so-called secret manual that could drive all of humanity crazy, so casually displayed in a modern way, Kingpin still felt a bit uneasy. This made him ask, Mr. Bai, what level can your cultivation method achieve? What level? Bai Ye thought for a moment, then bent his right index finger and flicked it lightly. The surging internal energy violently transformed into a sharp sword aura from the meridians at his fingertips, tilting wildly like a high-pressure water gun. Swoosh! With a soft sound of steel being broken, the upper part of the originally closed car began to tilt, and then, in the howling wind, the roof of the car was blown off. The cold night air rushed in, making the driver shiver. The originally closed car had become a convertible with Bai Ye's wave of his hand. Is this the ability I've cultivated? Kingpin observed the smooth edges of the cut marks, showing no sign of distress over the damaged car. Then, Kingpin looked at the text in Bai Ye's phone album, his eyes burning with fervor, and began to study it seriously. Soon, having read the entire book in the car, Kingpin was filled with doubt and turned to Bai Ye, asking, Mr. Bai, doesn't your purple cloud divine art say that internal energy cultivation is too slow? Reaching your level in less than 10 years is simply impossible. You need to broaden your thinking. Haven't you considered transferring your power? Bai Ye asked. Transferring power? Kingpin immediately recalled that part of the purple cloud divine art. An average person can cultivate a trace of true ki in one night. Would you spend money to buy his true ki and have him transfer it to you? Bai Ye said. Based on his success rate of $100 per night, his internal energy would amount to $36,000 per year, $360,000 in 10 years, and $3.65 million in 100 years, even if there's a 20% loss. For you, spending $3.65 million to instantly possess 80 years worth of an average person's true ki and become a mini Superman in one night, isn't that money worth it? It's not even as expensive as your car, Bai Ye said. Chapter 52 Internal Forces Flowing Gold. Buy internal energy with money. Hearing Bai Ye's description of the future, Kingpin's breathing quickened. He felt there was potential. Through Bai Ye's description, he realized the greatest value of the Xixia divine skill. The more people practiced it, the more internal energy could circulate throughout the world like money. Assuming no upper limit on internal energy storage, if all 6 billion people in the world practiced the Xixia divine skill, an average of 16 million years worth of internal energy could be generated daily. Moreover, due to the nature of energy transfer, internal energy could be freely traded like money. If each transaction resulted in a 20% loss, it would only ensure that internal energy decreased with use, maintaining its scarcity by taxing each transfer. Furthermore, while no one can live forever, some people pursue longevity. With abundant internal energy, one could be free from disease and prolong life. For humanity, internal energy was practically a hard currency, like gold. Given the strong demand and scarcity, the hard-earned internal energy would not depreciate over time, making it 100 times more profitable than selling oil. Kingpin even envisioned that, with the portability and scarcity of internal energy, clandestine gang transactions could be conducted directly on-site using internal energy, allowing them to secretly bring back massive amounts of internal energy and then exchange them for cash. Looking at the overwhelming wealth on his phone, Kingpin began to worry about whether he could handle it. After all, this was a secret manual that anyone could cultivate, whether mutant or vampire. Hey, are you scared? Bai Ye noticed Kingpin's hesitation and mocked. A little, but with such a huge opportunity right in front of me, if I back down without taking a bite, I won't be able to sleep for the rest of my life. Kingpin shook his head, his eyes regaining their resolve. I don't even care about the mayor of New York City anymore. With this manual, the mayoralty is practically in my pocket, Bai Ye said with satisfaction. Very good, then we can try selling courses, Kingpin asked doubtfully. Selling courses, of course. The purple cloud divine skill I showed you is the regular version. I actually have a weakened version and an upgraded version, Bai Ye said. What's the difference between these three versions? Kingpin asked. Bai Ye explained, of course there's a difference. In the weakened version, the meridians through which the internal energy flows are reduced, so the internal energy cultivated is less than half as pure and powerful as the original. The upgraded version, however, allows you to forcibly absorb the purple cloud true ki from others through physical contact. During Bai Ye's practice, although the total cultivation time of the Purple Cloud divine skill did not exceed 100 hours. However, with a spirit dozens of times stronger than ordinary people and the ability to continuously destroy meridians with internal energy, he could still make some simple modifications to the Xixia divine skill. The weakened version goes without saying, and the upgraded version seems similar in effect to the beaming divine skill and the star-absorbing technique, but in reality, it's much weaker in terms of universality and lacks the function of converting internal energy. In other words, the upgraded version of the Xixia divine skill can only absorb internal energy of the same origin as the Xixia divine skill. If it absorbs other internal energy, it will cause the foreign energy to accumulate in the body, similar to the fate of Ling Huchong in the Smiling, Proud Wanderer. Fortunately, in this world, there's only this one martial art in his possession from the Jin Yuang school, so unless someone innovates, he can absorb whatever he wants. As for changing the technique, it's possible but not recommended, because as more and more people learn the Xixia divine skill, the cost of switching to other techniques will become increasingly higher. With enough money, one can buy internal energy from someone else's Danshan, while cultivating other modified versions requires painstaking, gradual practice, making it less efficient. Forcibly absorbing the Purple Cloud true key from someone else's body, upon hearing Bai Ye's words, Kingpin gasped, staring at Bai Ye in shock. The upgraded version actually had such a heaven-defying effect. Bai Ye smiled and said, "The weakened version will be published as my autobiography, and the regular version will be sold through pre-orders, but the confidentiality of books is too poor. Even with pre-orders, the profits won't be very optimistic," Kingpin said. "Money doesn't matter. I have no interest in money. As long as the book sells, the whole world will definitely be swept up in a Kigen craze. As long as we establish the reputation of the founder of Kigen, won't money flow in endlessly?" Bai Ye laughed. Hearing Bai Ye's grand promise, Kingpin's breathing became rapid. He felt that coming to see Bai Ye today might be the best decision he had ever made. "Okay, I'll fully cooperate with you. When do you plan to publish this cultivation technique?" "I'll start a pre-publication campaign with various media outlets," Kingpin said. "Then let's do it a month later. I'll leave all the publicity to you." "I'm too lazy to get involved," Bai Ye said. Bai, you trust me that much?" Kingpin asked. "Trust you? No, I only trust my own fists." Bai Ye gently clenched his fist and said, "Tomorrow morning, I need you to immediately send me a team of experts to serve me." Kingpin nodded and asked, "What kind of expert team do you need?" "Mainly a mechanical and electrical team that can modify and debug large machinery. I will request more if needed in the future. Also, you must provide me with whatever equipment I need." "No problem, just a few application-oriented talents. I have several under my command. I'll assign them to you directly tomorrow," Kingpin said generously. Compared to the value Bai Ye could bring him, these were insignificant. If Bai Ye were to ask to test his sincerity now, he might even give him half of his wealth after some hesitation. "But what do you need these talents for?" Kingpin asked. "To train your body," Bai Ye said slowly. "Train your body?" Kingpin looked surprised. Only Bai Ye himself knew that in just over half a month since he obtained the panel, his strength had increased hundreds of times. At this rate of improvement, in the month leading up to the release of the Purple Cloud divine skill, he should be able to increase his physical strength another 20 times, easily reaching the level of 400 tons. Then, the time from the book causing a stir to attracting widespread attention should be enough for him to increase his strength and negotiate directly with a human government. Feeling the slight coolness of the evening breeze in the convertible, Bai Ye calmly turned his head and said, "Kingpin, take me back." "Take me back? Mr. Bai isn't coming to my place for dinner," Kingpin asked hastily, thinking that Bai Ye had refused to cooperate with him again for some reason. "No need, we've finished discussing things in the car. There's been a lot going on tonight, and I'm tired. Take me to the mains club, is that so?" "Then take Mr. Bai back first," Kingpin instructed the driver, adding, "Everything you need will be delivered to the playground near your house tomorrow morning. I'll buy that area for you to train on." "Okay, thank you," Bai Ye replied casually. Chapter 53 Kingpin's Attempt. As night fell, Bai Ye stepped out of Kingpin's convertible, gazing at the entrance of the mine's gym, already anticipating tomorrow. Full of expectation, Bai Ye and Camilla slowly walked towards the club's doors. With a soft click as the doors closed, Bai Ye placed his right hand on Camilla's shoulder. "What are you doing?" Camilla, beside him, seemed to realize something, awkwardly placing her right hand on her left wrist. You didn't take the opportunity to escape today. I'm very satisfied with your performance, Bai Ye said, pressing Camilla against the wall, gently lifting her chin, his gaze remaining calm. So, I hope you can satisfy me even more next time, you? Camilla pressed her right hand against Bai Ye's firm chest, struggling slightly. But with her extraordinary physical abilities, the strength she used was so great that even an ordinary person couldn't push her away. You can refuse, just like last night. The choice is yours, Bai Ye asked, grasping her fair, lotus root-like right arm. As soon as he finished speaking, Camilla's struggling movements gradually disappeared. Understanding his intention, Bai Ye chuckled, picked her up, and started to carry her to her sleeping area. Wait. I have something to ask you, Camilla suddenly said halfway there. What can't you say later? Bai Ye asked, puzzled. It's just, Camilla's face suddenly flushed, and she buried her head in Bai Ye's chest, asking, can I drink your blood while we're doing it later, Bai Ye? Isn't this a bit too perverted? Is it okay? The usually mature and elegant Camilla suddenly asked pitifully, the contrast between her demeanor and tone extremely alluring. But what awaited her was Bai Ye's calm refusal. I refuse. The risk is too great. I don't want to accidentally become a vampire. As soon as he finished speaking, amidst Camilla's disappointed gaze, Bai Ye flicked his right finger, his inner strength surging, and turned off the light switch in the room. It was late at night, but for Bai Ye and Camilla, the night had only just begun as the lights went out. Outside, after escorting Bai Ye back to the club to fulfill his promise, Kingpin immediately had his driver take the convertible back to his villa. On the way, with his exceptional efficiency, he pulled out his phone and made call after call, repeating all of Bai Ye's demands, requiring them to be completed by 8 a.m. the next morning. Upon returning to his residence, he found Gravestone, Bullseye, Scorpion, and several level 3 mutants hired with money standing before him, the core of his organization. Boss, what did you call us here for? Gravestone asked first. I have a Kigan manual here, traded from someone else. After you've thoroughly studied it, try practicing it, it will greatly benefit your strength. The first person to develop internal energy will be rewarded with 500,000, Kingpin said, then took out the manual he had just copied from Bai Ye's phone. Kigan, the subordinates exchanged bewildered glances. Could such a thing really exist? Despite their doubts, they didn't show them, immediately agreeing to take the copy of the Purple Cloud Divine Skill from Kingpin and begin studying it under the lamplight late at night. Kingpin watched them study, expressionless. After all, as the boss, he couldn't risk his life. Good things should be shared with his men first. But the more they looked at it, the more mysterious the thing seemed. Meridians. Danshan, if they really existed, they should have been discovered long ago. Why were they only discovering it now? It didn't make sense. Although they didn't believe it, they couldn't disobey their boss's request, so they treated it as a paid favor. As elites under Kingpin, their memories were naturally excellent. 2 hours later, as the first person to thoroughly understand the content appeared, the others gradually began to practice. Amidst their own doubts, 30 minutes slowly passed. A bald mutant felt a strange flow of energy within his body and was shocked. The thing their boss gave them was actually real. Soon, after calming his mind and slowly channeling his inner energy into his Danshan, the mutant immediately stood up proudly and said, "Boss, I did it. A trace of inner energy has appeared in my Danshan." "Oh, very good." Kingpin, who was waiting on the sofa, brightened up. Only 30 minutes had passed. This talent was quite impressive. Tombstone, standing nearby, stood up abruptly and looked at the bald mutant in shock, saying, "You really cultivated inner energy." "Why would I lie to you?" The bald mutant nodded. "The secret manual the boss gave me really can cultivate inner energy." After hearing this, Tombstone and several of his men couldn't help but regret their actions. They hadn't actually prepared to cultivate, they had just been spacing out and going through the motions. They hadn't expected this clueless guy to actually succeed, earning them $500,000 for nothing. Soon, inspired by the first success, the others also became serious. Within a total of 4 hours, everyone successfully cultivated a trace of inner energy. Kingpin also discovered that compared to human experts like Bullseye, mutants seemed to have a higher level of talent, able to cultivate a trace of internal energy every 40 minutes on average, possibly due to some physical advantage. Seeing that everyone had cultivated internal energy, Kingpin smirked and said, "You've all done very well. Tombstone, now transfer your internal energy to his." "Huh? Boss, why?" I only cultivated 2 traces of internal energy, while Is has 5, Tombstone said reluctantly. The Is that Tombstone mentioned was the mutant who first cultivated his first trace of internal energy. Kingpin smiled slightly and explained Bai Ye's theory of internal energy flow to the group. Soon, everyone present became excited. If it were really possible, then with money, who would bother with the arduous cultivation of internal energy? Each of them had hundreds or even thousands of underlings. They could easily let them cultivate, and they could harvest their earnings monthly, or even bite out of them. Understanding this, Tombstone quickly stopped being reluctant and urged Is, sit down quickly, I'm transferring my internal energy to you, don't just stand there. Soon, following the transfer procedure, Tombstone transferred all 2 strands of internal energy within his body to Is, then asked expectantly, how was it? Did it work? You should have 1.6 strands of internal energy now, right? It did work, but only a tiny strand of internal energy remained in my danshan. Is frowned. It seems the smallest unit of internal energy is a strand. Any smaller, and it will be lost in the meridians. Chapter 54. Hurry up and serve it. Kingpin was unconcerned about what is said about the smallest unit of internal energy. It doesn't matter, as long as it's proven that internal energy can be transferred between different people. That's enough, boss. What should we do next? Bullseye asked. Should we distribute the cultivation method to our men? Not for now. Bai Ye said not to leak the news for a month. Just announce that it's his training method, Kingpin said. He knew what kind of people his underworld men were. If he showed them the cultivation method, the whole world would probably be practicing the purple cloud divine skill the day after. Bai Ye? Is that the person who gave the boss the cultivation method? And boss, are you planning to release such a good cultivation method? The men asked doubtfully. That's right, the one who wiped out all the vampires in New York tonight. Kingpin lowered his eyes slightly and said, what can we do if we don't announce it? To maximize profits, the more people who cultivate this technique, the better. Besides, knowledge doesn't have a strict way of being kept secret. Eventually, the whole world will find out. Why don't we take the initiative to release it first and use our good reputation to get a mayoral position? And, Kingpin thought of Bai Ye's uninhibited personality. He definitely wouldn't generously share the technique, so Bai Ye was definitely hiding more than just this one secret. If Bai Ye had his eye on it, there would be no escaping it. How about this? You guys go to Africa first and spend tens of millions to get 100,000 people from the warlords there, Kingpin said. He could already foresee that as this technique spread, the price of people in Africa would become increasingly expensive. Buying them at such a low price as it was now would be impossible. He needed to make a quick buck while he could. Hearing their boss's words, his subordinates immediately understood and nodded in agreement. While Kingpin and his companions were discussing the purple cloud divine skill, videos of Bai Ye's battle with the vampires had gone viral online. Manufactured by the media, Bai Ye was portrayed as a hero who had utterly defeated the evil mutants, especially with a brutal, canon-like combat scenes far more exciting than any movie. While people knew of mutants before, official propaganda had limited their understanding of their destructive power. They were simply perceived as terrifying freaks with superpowers. Bai Ye's destructive prowess as a human firearm showed many viewers for the first time the extent of human strength. His movement speed of 100 meters per second was so fast that the average person couldn't keep up, forcing them to watch the video at a reduced zoom. Even at 0.1x zoom, it was still dazzling. The contrast between the vampire's sluggish movements and Bai Ye's slow speed was striking. This positive public opinion reached its peak after some recognized Bai Ye as the hero who had saved the bank 10 days prior. Of course, this was irrelevant to Bai Ye tonight. Description: you performed a piston exercise lasting 3 hours, 54 minutes, and 47 seconds, losing 0.03% of your total body mass. 21,347 consecutive piston exercises. Strength increased by 0.1. 11,548 consecutive piston exercises. Constitution increased by 0.1. 3,421 consecutive piston exercises. Spirit increased by 0.1. Ring ring. Early in the morning, Bai Ye was awakened by music. He quickly reached his right hand out from under the covers and answered the phone, holding it to his ear. Is this Mr. Bai? We are Mr. Fix's team, sent to assist you. We are currently at the Awakens Stadium. Do you have time to come over? A humble voice came from the phone. Bai Ye knew it was the expert team he had requested from Kingpin last night. Gently rubbing his eyes, he yawned and said, okay, Wait for me there. I'll be there in 3 minutes. Going to exercise? Camilla asked softly from the side. After a night of hard work, even her vampire body felt numb. The whole process was quite comfortable, and she was looking forward to whether it would continue tonight. Okay, I'm going out now. I stored 3 liters of blood bags in the refrigerator last night. I'll drink some if I get hungry. With that, Bai Ye hung up the phone, her body blurring as she emerged from the bed. After quickly putting on her clothes, she vanished from the room in a flash. On the way, Bai Ye tiptoed towards the plaza, releasing internal energy with each step to minimize the effects of her sprint. Even with her efforts to control her power, passers-by could still hear the continuous, muffled drumming sounds. By the time they tried to find the source of the sound, Bai Ye had already disappeared. After 2.5 minutes of running, Bai Ye arrived at the Awakens sports field, where a team of people in work uniforms were already waiting. Slowing down, Bai Ye emerged from a corner. The team members were waiting on the playground when they turned around and saw a long-haired man striding towards them, asking, "Are you the team Fix called over the phone?" "Yes, Mr. Bai, you can call me Ark." Boss Fix said, "We will do our best to meet your requests," Ark said humbly. "What are your needs, Mr. Bai?" "My request is simple. I just need you to modify the stamping machine a bit, changing the stamped shape to," Bai Ye calmly stated his requirements to the team. With Kingpin's team, the equipment requirements could be further increased. After explaining his conditions to the team, Bai Ye left the playground, letting them work on their own, only occasionally supervising their progress. He was going to the factory rented by Smith, where a simple stamping machine, custom-made for him, had already been set up. This machine had only been completely modified yesterday, so Bai Ye hadn't seen it before. However, according to Smith, because of concerns about potential problems with the modified equipment, the stamping power was not high, only about 200 tons, just enough for the short term. As for Peter Parker, he was fired yesterday after the equipment was successfully manufactured, or as Peter himself put it, to explore the path of a superhero. "Is this the equipment you had modified?" Inside the factory, Bai Ye examined the steel stamping machine before him. Smith explained, "Yes, boss. After your lower body is secured, this machine will continuously strike your back from all directions at a frequency of 20 times per second. At the same time, your secured lower body will be subjected to tremendous, even compression, and your freed arms can be used for strength training. Electrical wires can be connected to the waist gap, and a powerful current will be channeled into your entire body the moment the machine starts. As long as the equipment doesn't break, you won't need rest like the human body. You can train continuously." While Smith was explaining, Bai Ye had already stepped onto the giant machine. After a simple body securing, he said to Smith, "Let's get it running quickly. I can't wait to experience it." If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55 Chat Group Upgrade. At Bai Ye's command, Smith immediately pressed the machine's switch, and the entire machine started up in an instant. Thousands of volts of powerful current shot into Bai Ye's body through the wires, causing his cells to die continuously. Then, the press behind him began to strike Bai Ye's back evenly with a force of 5 tons at a frequency of 20 times per second, causing his skin to become slightly red and swollen. On Bai Ye's legs, the restraints contracted inward, constantly squeezing the skin of his legs. Strapped into the machine, Bai Ye endured the physical damage while using his hands to lift the 18-ton weighted equipment and began to exercise. Now he no longer needed to train different parts of his body. After his physique reached 2.8, he was no longer fatigued, and with his physique, training one area would increase the intensity of other areas. Now, not only his arms, but even his penis could support a 2-ton object without sagging when it was engorged. The ancient story of Lao Ai using his penis to prop up a car wheel is a prime example of this. Now, Bai Ye can use not only wooden wheels, but also car struts, a true human pile driver. Thump 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 thump, the continuous hammering echoed throughout the factory. Bai Ye was very satisfied with the efficiency displayed on the instructions, thinking that he could finally focus entirely on his training. Smith, who was operating the machine, spoke up at this moment. "Bai, there's something I want to tell you." "What is it?" Bai Ye asked while training. Did I say before that the boss wants to see you? After you were on TV yesterday, he mentioned it again, wanting to meet you and have dinner with you, Smith said. Oh, no problem, Bai Ye said casually. Smith, why don't you work for me, huh? Smith was taken aback. Work for me from now on. I trust your character. I'll pay you $20,000 a month, and I'll increase it later. How about it? Bai Ye asked. Last night, Kingpin's $200 million arrived, making him a billionaire now. $20,000, Smith hesitated for a moment before nodding emphatically. Okay, no problem, but my original boss has already signed an agreement, so it might take a while. It's alright, he'll terminate your contract tonight, Bai Ye said. He planned to call Kingpin tonight and ask him to bring the club owner on board as well. After all, his previous partner for the Purple Cloud Divine skill was that club owner he'd never met, but Kingpin was a better fit, so he switched partners. However, since he'd been using the club for so long, he felt he should at least show some appreciation. Although Bai Ye was generally uninhibited, he would still give something in return to those who had helped him, if the circumstances allowed. He did this simply because the feeling of giving back was satisfying, and he didn't want to owe anyone a favor. Meanwhile, in another dimension, the omniscient and omnipotent immortal was already drenched in sweat. Level 2. Level 2 already, the omniscient and omnipotent immortal stared in disbelief at the pale blue 2 icon before the title of the user Deep Blue in the chat group. He had just checked the levels of each group member on a whim and was astonished to find that Deep Blue's title had actually increased from 1 to 2. How is this possible? Less than half a month has passed. Even if that guy were a once-in-a-century genius, he couldn't possibly have increased this much with just one copy of the Purple Cloud Divine skill, the omniscient and omnipotent immortal thought to himself. After eliminating all the impossibilities, he could only deduce that the world that the group member named Deep Blue lived in was definitely an extraordinary world. At the same time, that fellow countryman must have had many fortuitous encounters in that world, coupled with his extraordinary talent, to be able to increase his strength at least 20 times in 12 days. His name is Deep Blue. Could he have another system for adding points? Could he be a sacred beast? The omniscient and omnipotent immortal thought, already vaguely regretting that he had banned him too quickly. But it was too late to regret it now. Retracting it would not only be futile, but would also make him look like a clown. No, I have to upgrade the chat group. I must obtain the method to his world before this guy reaches level 4, the omniscient and omnipotent immortal thought to himself. However, what he didn't know at that moment was that it was fortunate he couldn't invade Bai Ye's world. Otherwise, the moment he arrived in Bai Ye's universe filled with murderous intent, the Ancient One, who was closely watching Bai Ye, would use the time stone to observe the future and then instantly teleport him away. The omniscient and omnipotent immortal looked at the upgrade button on the chat interface and clicked confirm without hesitation. The next moment, a cold, mechanical voice echoed in the minds of everyone in the chat group. Chat group upgraded to level 2, group members increased to 20. In Hong Kong, Master Luo watched Ip Man slowly walk up to the round table, gently blowing on his tea leaves and saying, "Just walking up like that, not very impressive." As soon as he finished speaking, he heard the chat group notification in his mind. He paused, opened the chat group, and discovered that the chat group level had reached level 2, and the maximum number of members had reached 20. The chat group, which had been gradually quieting down recently, was now attracting everyone's attention due to the increased level in their minds. Kimijimakana, the group level has reached level 2, can we add a few more members? It's been just a few of us chatting these past few days, I hope it gets a bit more lively. Omniscient and omnipotent immortal, adding members is not under my control, it's a spontaneous function of the chat group, and I cannot interfere. Looking at Kamishimakana's comment, omniscient and omnipotent immortal completely ignored it. With a limited number of members, randomly adding some trash would obviously be detrimental to the group's growth. As an administrator, he saw many joining lists every day, but he had 3 rules for not adding members. Those unaware of the plot, low-level players, and those with low world limits are not allowed to join. Initially, without knowing the plot, he let in people from low-level worlds like Master Luo, occupying slots in the group, and he's regretted it ever since. Gentleman Sword, did everyone notice? Deep Blue's level in the group has reached level 2. Seeing Gentleman Sword's comment, the omniscient immortal felt annoyed. He didn't want to see anyone mention Deep Blue, it just made him irritable. Bai Ye, after hearing about the group's upgrade, paused for a moment but didn't pay much attention. continuing his training. While training, Bai Ye's gaze also fell on the Crimson title in the group, preceded by a bright red level 4. He had previously guessed that Crimson was the administrator's alt account. Based on this guess, once his strength reached level 4, he could officially consider revenge against the administrator. Chapter 56 Professor X's Request. Bai Ye wasn't entirely clueless about taking revenge on the omniscient and omnipotent Lord. After all, group members could meet each other in their worlds through the chat group if they allowed it. Once his strength reached level 4, he could directly meet him in person through the channel the Lord had opened. Hopefully, that fellow countryman will give me a chance to repay him in person, Bai Ye thought to himself while training. Meanwhile, Peter Parker, who had just finished crafting his Spider-Man suit and was preparing to become a street hero, watched Bai Ye's rampage in the video and fell into a long silence. He had only formally submitted his resignation to Bai Ye yesterday, and that very night, the other party had pulled off such a massive feat. Seeing the entire class discussing Bai Ye, Peter couldn't help but feel envious. When would his own reputation be so widespread? Peter, snap out of it, a voice sounded beside Parker's ear. He turned his head and saw James handing him something. What's this? Parker instinctively took the item from James. It was a beautifully crafted name tag with Osborn Industries written on it. You did well during your last internship, answering many questions correctly, so you were selected as an intern at Osborn Industries. You'll report there every Saturday and Sunday. This is your internship ID, you'll need it to get in, James said with a smile. Selected by Osborn, Peter Parker looked at the ID in his hand with surprise. Since becoming Spider-Man, good things have been happening one after another. However, he quickly became worried. He was supposed to be a superhero who helps the neighborhood, and his school time was already tight, let alone having to intern at Osborn on Saturdays and Sundays. Thinking of this, he envied Bai Ye even more. He was still a high school student, but now, with his school's permission, he didn't even have to go to school. But as soon as James spoke, he asked, Peter, you and Bai Ye are usually on good terms, right? Do you know where he lives now? Yes. Does the teacher need to see him? Peter looked at James with a puzzled expression. James hesitated for a moment before explaining, he hasn't been to school for over 10 days. Of course, I know he's busy as a superhero, so it's okay if he doesn't come. However, during today's meeting, the principal wanted him to come back to school to give a speech as an outstanding alumnus. Huh? Peter was stunned. In less than a month, Bai had already become an outstanding alumnus before even graduating, and the principal was inviting him back to give a speech? Could you please tell Bai Ye about this? His phone is off, and I can't reach him either, James pleaded. Peter nodded somewhat awkwardly. Well, okay, I'll ask Bai Ye's opinion after school and give you my reply tomorrow. Seeing James's relieved expression, Peter sighed silently, guessing that Bai Ye probably wouldn't agree. After all, he had watched Bai Ye train for the past 10 days, witnessing Bai Ye's physical abilities increase 4 or 5 times in that time. Given Bai Ye's current obsession with fitness, he would probably think giving a speech at school is a waste of time and refuse outright. Anyway, I'll ask for the teacher, Peter Parker thought to himself. He silently waited until school ended, then immediately left for the mains club, only to find Camilla sipping red wine in the private gym. Camilla, where is Bai Ye? I need to talk to him, Peter Parker asked, secretly wondering if Bai Ye, with his training fanaticism, would stray too far from the gym equipment. You're looking for Bai Ye? He should be training at the factory on 5th Avenue right now. We're moving out in a few days. Moving out? Where to? To the villa on Broadway. Camilla waved him away, signaling him to get lost. Following Camilla's address, Peter arrived at the factory where Bai Ye was training. Before the door even opened, a loud bang rang out, and 2 figures crashed through the glass, flying out of the factory. After rolling twice on the ground, they collapsed unconscious. What's going on? A bewildered Peter Parker kindly went to investigate and discovered that one of the ejected men was none other than the Punisher, the street hero who had come to the club seeking Bai Ye's help before. The 2 men lay limp on the ground, all with varying degrees of fractures in their limbs. After dragging them aside and calling an ambulance, Peter, still confused, went into the factory, only to hear continuous heavy thuds coming from inside. Bai Ye was training on a humanoid machine. Bai, who are those 2 outside? Peter asked curiously. Just 2 nosy superheroes, Bai Ye said calmly. 3 minutes earlier, the Punisher and Daredevil, after seeing Kingpin's praise of Bai Ye, had come to confront him. They were saying things like we shouldn't cooperate with criminals like Kingpin, and that we should join forces to storm Kingpin's lair and wipe him out. Too lazy to pay them any attention, Bai Ye told them to get lost, but the two refused to leave and kept spouting nonsense. Annoyed to no end, Bai Ye broke their limbs, ensuring they wouldn't be out of the hospital for at least 2 weeks, and then threw them out of the factory. Looking at Peter Parker, Bai Ye asked, "Why aren't you doing your Spider-Man work? What brings you here to see me?" "Well, Mr. James asked me to come find you. He wants to know if you'd like to go back to school." "Go back to school? For what?" Bai Ye asked. Hadn't he already agreed to give him a month's leave? Mr. James said the principal wants you to give a speech as an outstanding alumnus, Peter Parker repeated. An outstanding alumnus speech? Bai Ye hesitated, then refused without hesitation. "You can refuse the teacher for me. Make up any reason you want." "I knew it." Peter Parker nodded, his task complete, and left without lingering. He watched Bai Ye train for a while with curiosity before departing. Unbeknownst to Bai Ye, although he had just declined the invitation from the principal of Midtown High School, another principal's voice echoed in his mind. "Hello, child, let me introduce myself." A week later, while Bai Ye was training, an aged yet incredibly gentle voice suddenly appeared in his mind. "My name is Charles Francis Xavier, and I would like to ask you for a favor." Chapter 57 X-Men 1. Charles Francis Xavier. The moment Bai Ye heard the voice in his mind, he instantly became alert, glancing to his side. Not far away, Smith, who had been controlling the machine, was now looking at him calmly with a smile. He was definitely possessed by Professor X. "Sorry, I might need to borrow your friend's body for a while to talk to you," Smith said apologetically. "Professor X?" Bai Ye asked tentatively. Upon hearing this, Smith's face immediately showed surprise. "You know me, I vaguely remember. Your telepathic and mind control abilities are terrifying, it's hard to forget them." As Bai Ye spoke, he gently lowered the weight in his hands and pressed the machine's emergency stop button. With a hiss, the entire device immediately stopped operating, releasing Bai Ye's restrained body. Feeling incredibly light, Bai Ye slowly dismounted from the device, staring at Smith and asking, "You haven't already peered into my brain, have you?" "Of course not." Professor X gently shook Smith's head. "Please believe me, I don't casually peer into other people's memories without permission, not casually peering in, which means I can seriously peer in." Bai Ye thought to himself, but he did believe Professor X hadn't invaded his consciousness. After all, his brain contained too much information. If Professor X saw it, he definitely wouldn't be so calm. He might even go insane, like in the Deadpool massacre of the Marvel Universe arc, upon learning he was a character from a Marvel comic. If Professor X really did casually peer into other people's brains, Hydra hidden within SHIELD would probably have already fought him to the death. Professor X then showed a hint of surprise, saying, "Moreover, your mental fortitude is thousands of times stronger than that of an ordinary person. If I were to forcibly invade your consciousness with my mental power, the difficulty would be no different than invading the consciousness of thousands of people simultaneously. You would definitely detect it." This was the point that surprised Professor X the most. The reason he was able to find Bai Ye's location so quickly was because Bai Ye's mental power was too conspicuous. If an ordinary person's mental power is like a firefly, Bai Ye is like a torch in the dark. When Professor X was conducting a large-scale search of New York City with his mental abilities, he could spot him at a glance. Bai Ye wasn't too surprised by Professor X's words. After all, his mental attribute had reached 2.7. As long as he concentrated, he could achieve bullet time as a normal state, so it was quite reasonable for his mental strength to be so formidable. Bai Ye casually picked up a bottle of Coke from the shelf beside him, took a sip, and sat down on the steps to ask Professor X, "What brings the famous Professor X to my school this time?" "He wants you to bring a child to my school," Charles said. "She just awakened her mutant powers and ran away from home out of fear. She's currently being hunted by other mutants who covet her abilities." "Bring a child? A mutant? Could it be Rogue? Like the plot of X-Men 1, what does this have to do with me? Can't your X-Men do this?" Bai Ye thought for a moment and said, "It's too late to send the X-Men over, and this actually does have something to do with you," Charles said with a strange smile, "because that child wants to come to you, and she's almost at your doorstep." "My doorstep? What's going on?" Bai Ye was stunned for a moment. "Why would she want to come to me?" "I think it's probably because of your statement in the news that you have no prejudice against mutants," Plus a little bit of physical advantage, Charles said truthfully. Now that child is coming to my door based on information on the internet. My statement. Bai Ye immediately thought of what he said in the interview with a reporter before, that mutants are also human. So it really does have something to do with him. Okay, I need to reconsider your request, Bai Ye said. Now you need to tell me the girl's identity and why she is being chased by mutants. No problem. The child's name is Mary, and she is currently being chased by Sabretooth, a mutant under Magneto. As for the reason for the chase, I don't know, Charles said. At first, he thought Sabretooth was chasing Wolverine, but he didn't expect that after Rogue and Wolverine separated, Sabretooth's course of action would change, and that's when he realized something was amiss. A glint flashed in Bai Ye's eyes. It really is the plot of X-Men 1. That means Magneto now possesses a machine that can turn ordinary people into mutants. According to the plot of X-Men 1, Magneto, dissatisfied with humanity's attitude towards mutants, developed a machine that could turn humans into mutants. He planned to activate the machine at the Global Summit, turning all the world leaders into mutants to change the mutant situation. However, this machine would drain the mutants' abilities and stamina upon activation, so Magneto planned to temporarily transfer his own abilities to Rogue, who possessed absorption abilities, to activate the machine on her behalf. Even more incredible, the mutants transformed by this machine, while possessing abilities, would soon die from genetic collapse. And the ending of the movie, naturally, was the cliché of good triumphing over evil, with the X-Men's efforts thwarting Magneto's plot. Of course, Bai Ye wasn't dissatisfied with the story's ending. What he valued most now was the machine in Magneto's possession that could turn ordinary people into mutants. Thinking of this, Bai Ye immediately looked up and said, "Of course, no problem. Saving people is my duty." Where exactly is Mary now? Seeing Bai Ye's sudden enthusiasm, Charles was stunned for a moment, not reacting, staring blankly at Bai Ye. "What are you standing there for? Time waits for no one. You're delaying too much. What if something really happens?" Bai Ye urged. Although he didn't know why Bai Ye had suddenly changed so much, Bai Ye's willingness to help was ultimately a good thing. Charles nodded. The child is currently near St. Patrick's Cathedral on 5th Avenue, and the saber-toothed tiger chasing her will find her soon. Once they find her, please send her to Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. Please. After saying this, Smith's previously calm expression immediately turned blank, and he looked at Bai Ye in confusion. "Boss, why did you get off the machine?" "Don't worry about the details," Bai Ye said, standing up. "You stay here for now. I need to go out and take care of something. I'll be back in about an hour." With that, Bai Ye vanished from the spot. Chapter 58 Little Mischief. New York, 5th Avenue. Outside St. Patrick's Cathedral, crowds thronged to visit. In stark contrast to the bustling scene outside, a young girl, completely shrouded in a black robe, walked alone through a deserted alley. Gently lowering her black cloak, she revealed a delicate, chubby face. It was Mary, the girl Charles had asked Bai Ye to help. 15 days had passed since she awakened her mutant abilities. Having frequently witnessed mutants wreaking havoc in the news, she could never have imagined that she herself would one day become a mutant. Especially her awakened mutant ability, everyone who came into contact with her would involuntarily lose their powers and collapse unconscious. This ability was like a curse, forcing her to stay away from crowds to avoid harming others. "Found you." Just as Mary was hurrying along, a hoarse voice came from ahead in the alley. She looked up and saw a tall, burly man, dressed like a wild man and with a fierce appearance, blocking the intersection, staring at her with the eyes of someone eyeing prey. Especially striking were the 4 sharp fangs in his open mouth, resembling those of a large feline. Seeing the unapproachable man before her, Little Mischief instinctively took 2 steps back, asking timidly, "Hello, what do you need me for?" "Our boss needs you," Saber-Toothed Tiger said casually, looking at Little Mischief, who had nowhere to run. "I hope you'll come with me willingly, or you'll be in for a rough time." Before Saber-Toothed Tiger could finish speaking, sensing danger, Little Mischief, like a frightened animal, turned and fled without hesitation. Watching the girl hurrying through the alley, Saber-Toothed Tiger chased after her with unparalleled ease. Magneto had already told him about the little girl's abilities. It was merely an absorption of power. As long as she didn't come into contact with him, she would just be an ordinary girl, unable to escape his grasp. The little imp ran while glancing back at the figure relentlessly pursuing her. The scruffy savage was incredibly fast. He would catch up to her soon. 10 meters, 5 meters, 3 meters. Seeing the girl so close, a fierce glint flashed in Sabretooth's eyes. He couldn't let this little girl cause such a ruckus on the way back. He'd have to teach her a lesson first. Thinking this, Sabretooth leaped high, his 5 long, thin nails rapidly lengthening into sharp bone claws, then reaching for the little imp's Achilles tendon. But just before he could touch her, his animal instincts sensed danger first. A terrifying threat surged from above. What the hell? Sabretooth instinctively looked up, only to see a shoe rapidly enlarging in his vision before slamming down on his neck. Saber-toothed tiger felt as if a massive road roller weighing tens of tons had run over his back. The terrifying pressure instantly shattered his bones, slamming his body to the ground mid-air. Boom! The mischievous girl, filled with the urge to flee, heard a violent explosion behind her, followed by a noticeable tremor beneath her feet. Oh no, she thought, panicking at the sudden sound behind her. She stumbled and fell. Ignoring the burning pain from her hands scraping the ground, she hurriedly turned around, but what she saw there was something she would never forget. The disheveled man who had been chasing her lay sprawled on the ground like a dead dog. A boy in a white shirt had his right foot planted firmly on the man's back. Like a giant pillar supporting the sky. The terrifying force even penetrated the man's body, creating a huge crater a meter wide beneath his feet. Looks like the timing is perfect. Bai Ye looked at the little rascal staring blankly at him, ignoring the saber-toothed tiger shrouded in dust at his feet, and smiled as he extended his right hand to the girl, saying, "Hello, let's get acquainted. My name is Bai Ye. I heard you've been looking for me. Is this a god?" the little rascal wondered. At that moment, sunlight shone on Bai Ye's handsome face, making him seem like an angel from a divine realm. This perfect scene made the little rascal momentarily dazed, and she subconsciously reached out her right hand. But looking at Bai Ye's fair and slender fingers, and comparing them to her own hand covered in dust and blood, the girl withdrew her hand. "Your hand is injured." Bai Ye noticed the wound on the little rascal's arm, stomped the saber-toothed tiger's struggling head into the ground, and gently grasped the other's hand. "Wait, you can't touch me." Seeing Bai Ye take her right hand, the little rascal suddenly remembered her abilities and hurriedly pulled her hand away. But Bai Ye had already firmly grasped the little rascal's right hand, and a powerful force was transmitted from him. The girl anxiously looked up at the boy in front of her, only to see him looking at her calmly, as if nothing had happened. Could it be that my abilities don't work on him? The mischievous girl thought with delight, but feeling the continuous surge of power within her, she asked, "Are you alright? It hurts a little, but it's within acceptable limits." Despite the excruciating pain that felt like 1,000 cuts to his flesh, Bai Ye smiled calmly, his gaze fixed on the stats on his panel. Name, Bai Ye. Lifespan, 18/30,000, 29,000, 28,000, 27,000. Strength, 2.7 plus 0.4, 2.6 plus 0.4. Constitution, 2.7 plus 0.4, 2.6 plus 0.4. Spirit, 2.7 plus 2.6. Charisma, 1.4 plus unused attribute points, 0.1. It seems prolonged contact is risky, but the attribute points gained from the panel don't seem to be absorbed. Watching the values on the attribute panel steadily decrease, Bai Ye thought to himself, then released Xiaoteoki's right hand at the opportune moment and smiled. "Alright, your hand shouldn't hurt anymore, right?" "My hand." Xiaoteoki looked down and was surprised to see that the scratches on her palm had already healed, leaving only traces of blood mixed with dust to show that the wounds were real. Glancing at the saber-toothed tiger lying there like a dead dog, Xiaoteoki sincerely thanked him. Thank you for saving me. My name is Mary, you can call me Xiaoteoki. I came to New York this time to see you, no need to explain." Bai Ye smiled and gently patted Xiaoteoki's shoulder. "I know more than you do. I came here specifically to see you. See me." Xiaoteoki looked at her idol in shock. She thought this was a fateful encounter, a passing boy meeting a girl in trouble, but she never expected it to be a mutual journey. This was something she never dared to imagine. "That's right. Now, could you wait for me outside the alley for a moment? I have something to talk to him about," Bai Ye said. And as he released his right hand, Bai Ye saw the values on the panel that had been decreasing gradually return to normal, and the power he had lost began to recover. Chapter 59 Conversation and Choice. "Why should I talk to this slovenly man?" Little Mischief looked down at the saber-toothed tiger under Bai Ye's feet. How could this man be still alive despite being so badly injured? Nodding obediently, Little Mischief didn't ask any more questions and obediently walked out of the alley, waiting at the alley entrance. After Little Mischief had gone some distance, Bai Ye released his foot from the saber-toothed tiger's head, allowing its head to rise from the ground again. Kid, do you know who you've messed with? Sabertooth scrambled to his feet, his shattered bones and wounds long since healed. We're from the Brotherhood of Mutants, I know, we were looking for you. Bai Ye rolled his eyes at Sabertooth's brazen self-disclosure, like a street thug. I asked you to pass a message to Magneto. I know he's researching a machine to transform humans into mutants, however, his machine has significant flaws. Don't rush into testing it. I want to have a serious talk with him 3 days from now. Seeing Sabertooth's incredulous eyes, Bai Ye raised an eyebrow. Do you have a problem? If not, then get lost. How did you know about our plan? Sabertooth asked. Only Magneto and a few others knew about his organization's plan. How did this guy know? That's none of your concern. Just pass on my message to him. Bai Ye finished speaking, turned around, ignoring Sabertooth behind him, and slowly strolled out of the alley. Behind her, Sabertooth, whose mission had failed, hesitated before preparing to report the outcome to Magneto. Outside the alley, Rogue watched the bustling crowd, her heart pounding, her mind racing with a jumble of thoughts. Who is that scruffy man? Why did he capture me? And why did Bai Ye know I was here and want to find me too? And with his healing ability on my hand, is Bai Ye also a mutant? These thoughts flooded her mind, making her feel flustered, as if she were caught in a conspiracy. But recalling the continuous flow of power she felt when she shook hands with Bai Ye, her initial turmoil subsided. If I'm with Bai Ye, there won't be any problems. Stroking her healed hand, Rogue thought to herself. Sorry to keep you waiting, a calm voice came from behind her. Bai Ye took out a mask and put it on, then walked out of the alley and looked at the girl, saying, You must have a lot of questions right now, don't worry. I remember there's a Burger King nearby, let's talk as we walk, okay? The girl nodded heavily and followed behind Bai Ye towards the fast food restaurant. A few minutes later, the girl looked at the pile of food in front of her. Aren't you going to eat? You eat. It's not convenient for me to show my face in public. Bai Ye tugged at his mask and said, I'll take this opportunity to tell you about the current situation. First of all, there's your ability, a super powerful ability to absorb other people's power, life force, and even mutant abilities through physical contact, with great potential for improvement. That's why that mutant wanted to hunt you down before. Your ability is extremely tempting to them, Bai Ye said slowly. He didn't want to reveal Magneto's true purpose for the time being. After all, it might cause trouble if the X-Men found out. As for me, the reason I found you by chance is because another mutant asked me to escort you to a school where all the students and teachers are mutants. A mutant school? Are there such places? Rogue stopped eating and stared wide-eyed. Of course. You know how society treats mutants these days. In normal schools, it's not good for either mutants or humans. Are you a mutant too? Rogue asked, looking at Bai Ye. She had always been quite self-conscious about her mutant identity. Nothing good had ever happened to her since she awakened this ability. Not currently, just a superhuman. But everyone has mutant genes in their bodies, and it's not impossible for you to awaken those genes and become a mutant in the future, Bai Ye said meaningfully. Upon hearing that Bai Ye wasn't a mutant, Rogue's head immediately sank, and she continued chewing her food silently. Now you have two choices. The first is to stay at my house for the night, and I'll take you to the Mutant Academy tomorrow morning. As for the second, you can choose not to go to that Mutant Academy. Whether you go home or wander the streets afterwards, I won't stop you, Bai Ye said slowly. Faced with Bai Ye's choice, Little Rascal pondered for a long time before slowly looking up and asking, Can I come with you? Come with me. Bai Ye fell into thought. He didn't actually have any intention of subduing this girl with the ability to absorb power. After all, aside from the pain of contact, comparable to an electric shock, it had no effect on his training. Bai Ye's first talent was that there were no bottlenecks, allowing him to grow stronger infinitely. That is to say, the training effect at 100 tons was 10 times that at 10 tons, there was no situation where the training speed slowed down. If that was the case, why make the girl absorb his power, and then reduce her strength to 10 tons before subjecting her to 10 tons of weight training? Would that be counterproductive? If the girl's absorption ability only absorbed physical energy and had no effect on strength, then it would be quite useful to him, since the training effect is doubled when physical strength is at its limit. However, the girl herself couldn't control her abilities, whether it was strength, physical energy, or superpowers. She could absorb them with just a touch. That would be too useless to him, serving no purpose other than being a pretty ornamental vase. But he wasn't short of money now, and raising a mutant was a piece of cake. What if he needed her in the future? So, faced with Rogue's request, Bai Ye hesitated for a moment before quickly smiling and saying, "Of course, no problem. But to prevent you from regretting it later, I'll take you to the Mutant Academy first, and then we'll make a decision." "No. I won't regret it." Rogue shook her head vigorously, then realized that her intentions were a bit too obvious, blushed, and buried her head in her food. After a peaceful and uneventful night, early the next morning, Bai Ye, according to the address Charles had left, took Rogue to the Whizzle Genius Youth Academy. Looking at the beautiful manor in front of him, even Bai Ye's eyes flashed with curiosity about this mutant academy. Chapter 60 Professor X, Stand Still. Welcome to Xavier's Academy for Gifted Youngsters. Please wait a moment, I've already sent a teacher to pick you up. New York, Westchester County, Gramergen Road. Just as Rogue and White Knight stood at the academy gate, a gentle voice rang in their minds. Seeing Rogue's furtive glances, White Knight explained, "Don't be nervous. The speaker is the mutant with psychic abilities I mentioned yesterday, the principal of this school." Creak. Not long after, with the sound of the gate being pushed open, 3 figures emerged from the academy gate. 1 man and 2 women. Leading them was a man with deep red glasses, followed by a white-haired black woman and a woman with burgundy hair. "You must be White Knight," the one Professor X mentioned. All 3 focused their attention on White Knight, curiously sizing up this non-mutant who had made the news and possessed considerable strength. Then, the red-haired woman's gaze fell on Rogue. Seeing her warily cowering behind Bai Ye, she smiled gently. "You're Mary, right? Don't be nervous, everyone here is one of us. Let me introduce myself. My name is Jean Grey. My abilities are mind control and telekinesis," the red-haired woman said, extending her right hand slowly. An invisible force of telekinesis surged forth, causing a coin to float in the air, moving erratically. This immediately caught Xiao Tao's attention, and the equally unusual scene somewhat eased Xiao Tao's initial wariness. "Is this Phoenix?" Bai Ye thought, looking at the floating coin. As the host of the Phoenix Force, she was currently sealed. If she could perfectly master the Phoenix Force, she could even rewrite reality. However, his universe was more like the movie version. If this thing were unsealed, it would be good enough if it could destroy an island. Led by the 3, Bai Ye and Xiao Tao walked into the school. Under Bai Ye's gaze, there were children running on the water and teenagers playing basketball using their mutant abilities. In Bai Ye's eyes, this was just a detention center for abnormal humans. Just then, the group of young men playing basketball noticed the group being led by the teachers. One of them, seeing Little Rascal, loudly invited, "Are you a new student? What's your mutant ability? Come play with us." Little Rascal, watching the various mutants freely using their abilities, felt a pang of envy. Mutants didn't understand each other, and she only lamented how burdensome her own ability was, preventing her from even having normal contact with others. "Want to play?" Just as she was lost in her reverie, Bai Ye's voice rang out, and then the girl felt a warm hand gently touch her cheek. The next moment, a powerful force surged into Mary's body. She looked up in astonishment and saw that the person who had reached out was none other than Bai Ye. Feeling the power transfer was nearly complete, Bai Ye released his grip, smiling. "You're enhanced now, go for it." Touched, Xiao Taoki glanced at Bai Ye, who had just intervened, and shook his head vigorously, saying, "I don't want to play basketball, I just want to follow you." Their interaction attracted the attention of the basketball-loving boys. A mutant boy suddenly pointed at Bai Ye and shouted, "Hey, aren't you that Bai Ye from TV?" This immediately caused a stir. The surrounding students all dropped what they were doing and crowded around. Upon closer inspection, they were indeed the celebrity who had appeared on television before, and instantly became excited. Excitement, admiration, goodwill, disgust. A multitude of emotions surged within them towards this non-mutant, but positive, superhuman. Faced with a chaotic atmosphere, Jean had to use her mental abilities to say, "Quiet, these are the professor's guests. Don't make a scene." Under her mental calming abilities, the teenagers instantly quieted down. Jean breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Let's go quickly." The professor has been waiting inside for a long time. Okay, Bai Ye nodded slightly and followed them to a room. He gently pushed open the door and entered, where he saw a bald old man in a wheelchair. Finally, we've officially met, Mr. Bai, Charles said with a gentle smile. Yes, as you requested, I safely brought Rogue here, but it seems she doesn't want to stay, Bai Ye said, finding a seat like the others. That's alright. We respect every mutant's choice. If she wants to leave with you, I won't stop her, Charles said nonchalantly, causing Rogue behind Bai Ye to secretly breathe a sigh of relief. I actually wanted to ask Mr. Bai a question this time, Professor X said earnestly. After seeing the mutant school, has your view of mutants changed? Why should it change? Don't forget that mutants were once human too. Once human, always human. Is there any difference in their thinking? Bai Ye said calmly, but these words improved everyone's opinion of him, including Professor X and Jean. They knew Bai Ye didn't discriminate against mutants, but now they truly accepted him. However, his next words stunned them. However, I don't agree with your approach. Bai Ye changed the subject. Black people during the colonial period and Jews during the Third Age were physically closer to humans than you, yet they still couldn't escape persecution and slaughter. Professor X, I think your approach is too cowardly. In comparison, Magneto, although radical, is more to my liking, Bai Ye said truthfully, a statement that truly surprised everyone. A pure-blooded human agreeing with the ideology of a mutant resistance leader was somewhat unbelievable. But in Bai Ye's view, mutants and humans were nothing more than a struggle between intelligent life forms. Both sides were birds of a feather. What was the real difference? He'd already slept with vampires, as long as they were good-looking and to his liking. He'd even sleep with mutants. What did you say? Bai Ye's support for Magneto immediately provoked Cyclops' protest. Only the professor's ideals can allow humans and mutants to coexist. Magneto's actions will only lead mutants to destruction. Seeing Cyclops' agitated state, Bai Ye helplessly stood up and looked at Charles, saying, Professor X, could you stand up for a moment? Charles, sitting in his wheelchair? Do you even want to read what you're saying? Fine. Bai Ye looked at everyone in the seats helplessly and said, to me, everyone here now, except for Professor X, is trash. Your so-called peace ideals are worthless to me. Chapter 61 I want to become a mutant. Without the power to protect themselves, mutants are nothing but fish on a chopping board. What I'm saying isn't justice, it's just reality. Bai Ye calmly looked at the mutants present and said, if I were hostile to you, none of you would survive more than 3 seconds, especially Professor X. In fact, I've always felt that as the leader of the mutants, you shouldn't be showing your face like this. A single bullet would be enough to paralyze you. Bai Ye looked at Professor X and spoke frankly. To Bai Ye at this moment, everyone present was a group of high-attack, low-defense individuals, the kind that could be easily defeated with a single punch. As long as Professor X was killed, the others posed no threat to him. Looking at the young man who stood up and looked down at them, Professor X lowered his head and fell into deep thought. Cyclops was somewhat unconvinced, but as soon as he looked up, he felt a lightness on his head. The next moment, a thick, crimson laser burst from his eyes, piercing through the wall in front of him, startling him so much that he quickly closed his eyes. The sudden turn of events startled everyone. Jean Grey instinctively tried to activate her telekinesis, but the next moment her vision turned red as Bai Ye slipped his glasses over her head. Turning her head, she saw Bai Ye, the instigator, back in his original position, calmly observing them. You see, this is the difference between us. Bai Ye spread his hands, looking at Cyclops with his eyes tightly closed and Jean Grey with her glasses. The flaws of this extreme development were too great. If targeted, they would truly become useless. This is a sneak attack. Cyclops tightly covered his eyes to prevent the laser beams from his eyes from injuring others. You can't even open your eyes, so don't be stubborn. Unless your eyeballs can keep up with bullets, you can't even keep up with my steps, Bai Ye teased. Jean Grey hurriedly took off her glasses and put them on her boyfriend, Cyclops, so he could see again. Looking at Bai Ye, he said, let's have another round. Just before he could finish, the familiar sensation returned. Bai Ye watched Cyclops hurriedly close his eyes again, and gently twirled the glasses he had taken from him with his index finger. Need me to demonstrate again? Bai Ye smiled and tossed the glasses back. Watching Cyclops put the glasses back on, everyone had to admit that compared to Bai Ye, their movements were indeed too slow. If this young man truly harbored hostility, Killing them would be a matter of moments. Inside a seaside base, Magneto looked at Sabretooth, who had returned with only one report, and asked, "What happened?" "The target was intercepted by a human named Bai Ye," Sabretooth said. "Bai Ye?" Magneto thought of the interview a week ago. "How did you run into him?" "It seems to be a request from the X-Men, and that person knows about our plan. He knows about our machine making," Sabretooth said. "How is this possible? Did Charles spy on your memories?" Magneto pondered. "No, it seems only that person knows, and he said the machine we built has a major flaw, demanding we find him within 3 days. He wants to talk to us." "A flawed machine? Wants to talk to me?" Magneto was even more puzzled. A human would actually want to talk to him, a mutant? What was there to talk about? "Alright, I'd like to see what he wants to talk to me about," Magneto said calmly. "Have your men investigate Bai Ye and the target's whereabouts immediately." Half an hour later, Sabretooth, having gathered intelligence through his subordinates, returned and reported, "The news just came back from our informant at Xavier's college that Bai Ye has brought the target to the Mutant Academy. However, he didn't stay long. It seems he had a conflict with the X-Men. He left the Academy with the target shortly after." He had a conflict with the X-Men. Magneto, who was initially somewhat displeased that Bai Ye had gone to the Academy, smiled slightly and said, "Send me his current location. I'll go find him directly." As soon as he finished speaking, the old man slightly clenched his right hand, and the metal wall behind him transformed into a huge iron plate under his control. Magneto took a step forward, stepping onto the smooth iron plate. Under the control of the magnetic field, the iron plate levitated, carrying him all the way out of the base and across the sea. As Bai Ye started the car and headed back, he looked ahead and said to the little rascal in the passenger seat, "Are you sure you don't want to stay at the Academy and want to leave with me?" The little rascal nodded emphatically. "I'll go with you." "Is there anything I can help you with?" "Help?" Bai Ye thought for a moment and said, "For now, try to control your abilities, like absorbing other people's energy only by touching them, or try developing your abilities. See if you can absorb abilities remotely or allow inanimate objects to absorb their properties through contact. Also, see if you can permanently preserve the abilities you absorb, or pass them on," Bai Ye casually mentioned. The little rascal in the comics could do all of these things, so there was no reason he couldn't now. The reason he was so useless in the original movie was probably because he had a resistance to his abilities and hadn't used them much, let alone developed them. Controlling absorption abilities, little rascal looked at her hands, lost in thought. Bai Ye's suggestions were indeed good, but I don't know who to use it on, or how to practice. "It's okay, I'll buy you a basket of white mice tomorrow, you can practice on them," Bai Ye said nonchalantly, since mice's lives weren't worth much, very cheap. White mice, little rascal, completely unexpected that she could practice like this, was stunned for a moment, then thought it was fantastic. But just as she was about to speak, she noticed that with a creaking sound of metal, the entire car was suspended in midair, no longer moving forward. What happened? Little rascal was startled by the supernatural phenomenon before her. "Nothing, just another mutant, wait here for me for a while." Bai Ye's tone was incredibly relaxed, inwardly marveling at the villain's efficiency. Opening the car door and getting out, she looked up to see an old man wearing a metal helmet descending onto a huge steel millstone. "Human, I heard you were looking for me, now I'm here," Magneto said. 4 sharp iron spears split from the metal disc beneath his feet, circling around him. He would attack immediately if Bai Ye's next words displeased him. Bai Ye didn't waste any words, stating directly, "I want to become a mutant, and I want to borrow that machine you have, Magneto." If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62: Sonic Speed and Promises. What did you say? You want to be a mutant? Magneto was surprised by Bai Ye's statement. Is that so hard to understand? I've never discriminated against mutants or humans. If I could have another ability, what's wrong with becoming a mutant? Bai Ye said, looking directly at Magneto. Looking at this human who admired mutants, Magneto's originally tough attitude softened noticeably. Indeed, if this boy also became a mutant in the future, then he would be one of them, one of their own. Then what about the machine you told Sabretooth about having a defect? Magneto asked. Because it's true, All mutants transformed through that machine die from genetic collapse. You'll understand this after your experiments. Bai Ye looked at Magneto and said before he could ask, as for me, my body's healing ability is beyond that of ordinary people. A mere cellular collapse is nothing to my body, so let me become a mutant. Bai Ye looked at Magneto confidently and said, if I become a mutant, all mutants will be made greater by my existence. With your mutant abilities, which are all random, where do you get such confidence? Magneto frowned. But in an instant, the ground beneath Bai Ye's feet exploded, creating a crater about 2 meters wide. Bai Ye's figure was already standing in front of Magneto, and at the same time, boom, the huge explosion finally reached Magneto's ears, followed by a howling wind that made Magneto's robes flutter loudly. Magneto's pupils suddenly contracted as he stared in horror at the confident figure twisting 4 iron spears into a knot. He felt a chill run down his spine, even though he sensed the sound slightly later than the figure itself. Even without other abilities, I can dominate everything with pure brute force. Any mutant abilities are merely icing on the cake for me, Bai Ye said calmly, looking at Magneto who was so close. Only now did Magneto realize he had been overconfident. He had watched videos of Bai Ye's battles, focusing primarily on the cannonball-like speed, and had deliberately maintained a 10-meter reaction distance to prevent a sneak attack. But now, Bai Ye's speed was more than twice as fast, even faster than sound at certain moments. Against the speed of sound, 10 meters and 1 meter made little difference to Magneto's reaction time. And this was only the result of less than a month of training by Bai Ye. Inside the car, Rogue, who had heard the explosion, leaned out the window to observe, only to see Bai Ye smiling as he adjusted Magneto's collar. Think about it. Let me become one of you, and then, as a mutant, be held high in the sky by everyone. Bai Ye smiled. I will prove to you that in less than 3 years, the situation of all mutants will improve. Whether human or other creature, capable people should not be discriminated against because of their identity. Don't you agree? Bai Ye's words were like Pandora's box, enticing Magneto. At this moment, Bai Ye's words reminded him of Black King in the concentration camp when he was a child. It seemed that Black King had said the same thing to him back then. Magneto remained silent for a long time, looking at the crater in the distance and Bai Ye's smiling face, and solemnly said, I hope you won't disappoint me. I never disappoint. Bai Ye smiled and extended his right arm. It will be a pleasure to cooperate in the future. Max Eisenhardt, hearing this name that hadn't been called in a long time. Magneto reached out and shook hands with Bai Ye firmly. Very good. From now on, we are allies. Time is of the essence, so why don't we go and see your transformation machine now? Bai Ye smiled. Magneto, having made his choice, completely relaxed and agreed. No problem. Bai Ye happily returned to the car, looking at Rogue beside him. Get ready, we're changing our destination. Changing our destination? Where? Rogue asked, startled. The base of the mutant we were planning to capture you're at. There, I'll become one of you, Bai Ye said. The next moment, under Magneto's control, Bai Ye's car instantly floated up, flying towards the base built on the island. Name, Bai Ye. Lifespan 18/50, 000. Strength 2.8 plus 0.4, strength 100 tons, maximum speed using internal energy 345 meters per second, constitution 2.7 plus 0.4, purple cloud divine skill cultivation speed 15 seconds per wisp of internal energy, currently possesses 150 years of internal energy, spirit 2.7 plus charisma 1.4 plus unused attribute points 0.1, note, information in parentheses is not visible to the protagonist. Half an hour later, as the car slowly descended, Bai Ye saw the island before him, also teeming with mutants. Compared to Professor X's academy, the environment here was much dirtier and more chaotic, and the proportion of mutants with physical deformities was significantly higher, with a wide variety of abilities. In fact, it was precisely because of the experience of being ostracized and hated by humans due to their physical deformities that no respectable mutant would consider joining a terrorist organization like the Brotherhood. As the vehicle slowly landed, Mystique, covered in blue scales and possessing the ability to change her appearance, came forward with a group of strangely shaped mutants. Seeing Bai Ye get out of the car, Mystique said with hostility, Eric, why did you bring this human here? All the mutants present were hostile towards ordinary humans, and upon hearing Mystique's words, they immediately glared at Bai Ye with anger and murderous intent. If it weren't for Magneto's authority, they might have already pounced on him. Human? No, like that senator you captured, he will soon become one of us, Magneto said. You mean, Mystique realized something. That's right, let's start the first test now. Bring that senator over too, I'm going to conduct the ability awakening on both of them here, Magneto said. I understand. You guys wait for me at the experimental table, Mystique said, then turned and left, leaving the confused mutants wondering what kind of experiment it was. Led by Magneto, the group headed towards the experimental area. On the way, Rogue asked worriedly, Sir, are you really going to become a mutant through that machine? Isn't that too dangerous? It's alright, it's just a matter of cell collapse, it won't kill me, Bai Ye said with a smile. Not to mention that adding points to his physique would allow his body to recover completely, even with his current healing abilities, Bai Ye felt he could survive the cell collapse. Compared to gaining a mutant ability, this small risk was insignificant, the only price he had to pay was becoming a mutant. Chapter 63 Awakening Mutant Abilities. Following Magneto, they traveled across the island. After several turns and crossing a steel bridge levitated by Magneto's powers, they entered a laboratory built by the mutants. The entire laboratory was constructed within the mountainside. Upon arrival, Bai Ye examined the futuristic-looking device before him and asked, Is this the mutant converter you built? Magneto nodded gravely. If I'm not mistaken, it's just a failed experiment, there's no need to try and do everything at once. Maybe you can try to improve it and fix its flaws, Bai Ye casually remarked. As they talked, the door behind them slowly opened, and Mystique pushed in a man strapped to a wheelchair. This strapped-to-the-wheel man was a current U.S. senator who had recently been advocating for mutant registration legislation and held a hostile attitude towards mutants. This was why Magneto had targeted him. Behind Mystique followed Sabretooth and Toadman. Sabretooth, seeing the people beside Magneto, felt a chill and silently slipped to the side. What do you mutants want? The man in the wheelchair, tightly bound, asked Magneto in a panic. We just want you to cooperate with us in an experiment, Magneto said with a smile to Bai Ye. The experiment is about to begin. Stand next to him and participate. Bai Ye nodded and, under Rogue's tense gaze, slowly walked towards the bound senator. The senator's expression changed instantly upon seeing Bai Ye's face. He clearly recognized him. You're a mutant too. Not now, but soon, Bai Ye replied, having no intention of explaining to a dead man. As for whether to save the senator? Please, he wasn't the one who harmed the man. Whether the man lived or died was none of his business. Soon, under the senator's uneasy gaze, Magneto stepped onto the conversion device, pressing his hands on the buttons on either side. Once the machine started, a strange suction force began to relentlessly extract Magneto's mutant abilities. In just moments, the expression on Magneto's face, as his abilities were extracted, changed from peaceful to pain. Then, the cylindrical outer support of the entire device began to rotate rapidly. A soft white sphere of light began to expand outwards, engulfing everyone present and completely affecting the interior of the mountain. Everyone who had awakened their mutant genes felt nothing while bathed in this light. However, the only two people present who hadn't awakened their mutant genes, Bai Ye and the senator, felt every cell in their bodies tremble as their mutant genes began to activate within the light. What abilities can I awaken? Bai Ye wondered curiously, looking at the sky filled with light. His gaze then fell on his attribute panel. Description: Your genes have undergone an ability induction. Dormant genes within you are gradually awakening. Total awakening time: 2 hours, 15 minutes, and 32 seconds. Awakening probability: illusionization, 53.32%, stance, 24.35%, self-limitation, 22.33%. Do I need 2 hours to find out what my ability is? And these 3 abilities, is this a gacha-style awakening? Bai Ye pondered, the surrounding light shrinking and disappearing completely. Mr. Bai, are you alright? Seeing everything was over, Rogue ran over anxiously, looking Bai Ye up and down. I feel fine, nothing much. Maybe it will take a few hours for the effects to appear. Bai Ye smiled, the whole process actually not very painful. Genetic awakening isn't that fast, of course. The machine's ability is just an inducement. You can rest here today, Magneto said weakly, struggling to stand up from the machine. Soon, under Mystique's arrangement, Bai Ye, as a VIP, checked into a room on the island with Rogue. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, Without any training equipment, Bai Ye began to slowly circulate his internal energy under Rogue's curious gaze. In the tranquil room, as Bai Ye circulated his purple cloud divine skill, a gentle breeze swirled around him. Purple mist no longer just lingered on his face, but subtly enveloped his entire body. "What is this?" Little Mischief asked in astonishment, watching the purple aura emanating from Bai Ye's skin as his inner energy flowed through his meridians, appearing as solemn as a deity. With Bai Ye's extraordinary hearing, he could hear the surging sound of his inner energy flowing through his meridians, like the rushing Yangtze River. 2 short hours passed peacefully in Bai Ye's meditation. Utilizing fragmented moments for cultivation, he easily increased his inner energy's upper limit by 1.5 years. Bai, what were you doing just now? Little Mischief asked curiously. Is this your mutated ability? No, anyone can cultivate this. As for my mutated ability, Bai Ye glanced at his status bar. Description: total time: 2 hours, 15 minutes, and 32 seconds. Your Gene Awakening ability is etherealization. Permanent ability Berserk mode has begun. Increased physical attributes can eliminate side effects. Is the awakened ability etherealization? Bai Ye pondered, looking at the description, but the next moment, a sharp pain shot through his arm. Little Mischief exclaimed in surprise, because a narrow gash had suddenly appeared on Bai Ye's arm, clearly revealing the muscle fibers and bones beneath the skin. Is this ability Berserk mode? Bai Ye thought thoughtfully. He knew that his arm was now harder than steel, even bullets couldn't penetrate his skin, yet it had been torn open so easily. No, it's less like being torn open and more like being devoured, Bai Ye thought. He could clearly feel that his right hand had indeed lost a little weight, about 0.03 grams. It's alright, just a minor injury, Bai Ye said with a smile, reassuring Little Mischief, looking at his worried expression. With a regenerative power granted by his physique of 3.1, the laceration on his arm began to heal before it even bled, and it was expected to be fully restored in 4 or 5 minutes. But how do I use my ability? Bai Ye wondered, looking at the healing wound on his right hand. Then, following the feeling that arose in his mind, Bai Ye's right arm vanished with a thought. Looking at his right hand, which was still in sight, Bai Ye slowly reached for the little imp beside him. To the little imp's surprise, Bai Ye's right hand clipped through her clothes, easily passing right through her. Phantom cat? No, it should be a hollow dog. A hint of excitement flashed in Bai Ye's eyes. He seemed to know how to use his ability. Chapter 64 Hollowing Out. Mr. Bai, is this your awakened ability? Little Mischief asked in surprise as Bai Ye's right hand overlapped with his own clothes. I think so. Wait here for me, Bai Ye said excitedly. The next moment, not only his right hand but his entire body disappeared from reality. When Bai Ye's vision returned, he found himself in an absolutely dark space. In this space, there was no light, no sound, not even air or gravity, just like being in silent space. An ordinary person would die from internal organ explosion in no time. But for Bai Ye, he could survive in this environment for more than 10 minutes without any problem. After groping around in the darkness, Bai Ye learned that the entire space was roughly the size of a cube with sides of 3 meters. So this is what intangibility means. Bai Ye looked at the nothingness before him and began to control his ability. The originally isolated space was brought into the light and air by Bai Ye, and the next moment, the originally dark space immediately became bright and gradually became habitable. And this also allowed Bai Ye to understand his awakened mutant ability. Simply put, it means having a freely controllable space, allowing one to move freely between reality and the virtual space. Now that I have this ability, my survival skills have increased dramatically, Bai Ye thought, surveying the space before him. Theoretically, as long as he hides inside, Professor X's psychic abilities won't affect him, and it can also be used as a special ring. After some experimentation, Bai Ye slowly emerged from the virtual space, intending to greet Xiao Taoki, but the next moment a sharp pain shot through his back as a long, narrow wound tore open. Did the special ability go berserk and tear his body open? Bai Ye wondered. However, he wasn't too worried. Compared to this level of wound, the burns from his usual electric shock training were enough to make his brain boil, but he'd still train as usual. Improving his physique would solve the problem. He casually greeted Rogue, let's go. Now we can meet Magneto and the others as mutants. With that, Bai Ye took Rogue's gloved right hand, opened the door, and walked out, quickly finding Magneto and the others in the lobby downstairs. Seeing Bai Ye come down, The Brotherhood members all looked over. So, your superpowers have awakened? Magneto asked. Of course, the ability is pretty good for me. Intangibility, I'd say I'm a level 3 mutant, Bai Ye replied. Then, in their eyes, his figure passed through a nearby chair and walked straight over. Seeing Bai Ye's ability, the mutant's gazes immediately softened. Magneto said happily, "Welcome to the Brotherhood of Mutants. From now on, you're one of us, of course. As I said before, I will make sure mutants are fully integrated into human society," Bai Ye said, and then, to their astonishment, a wound tore open from his forehead to his jaw. "Are you alright?" Mystique stepped forward to support Bai Ye, her attitude completely different from before. "I'm fine. This is the machine defect I mentioned before. My abilities are starting to go berserk, and I need some time to stabilize." Bai Ye waved his hand dismissively. As he spoke, the torn flesh on his face had already closed up on its own. If one didn't look closely, the wound wouldn't even be noticeable. "It seems my plan really needs to be changed," Magneto sighed in disappointment. He had originally planned to use the machine to convert all the world leaders attending the global summit into mutants, but he hadn't expected the machine to have such a significant flaw. If he really wanted to kill, he could kill with his own Iron Man suit hundreds of times more efficiently than that defective conversion machine. "It's alright. I've already promised to improve the mutants' living conditions. You just need to wait patiently. However, I think your strength also needs to be improved," Bai Ye said to Magneto. "How about this? You contact Kingpin and tell him it was my instruction. He'll understand what to do." "Kingpin? That underworld emperor?" Magneto looked at Bai Ye in surprise, not expecting him to have any connection with Kingpin. "Yes, your physical abilities are no different from a normal person's. You can even be penetrated by a pistol. Go find Kingpin and get your skills improved," Bai Ye said seriously. In X-Men 3, Magneto, a level 4 mutant, could move the Golden Gate Bridge, which weighs hundreds of thousands of tons, but due to his poor physical abilities, he was penetrated by a syringe and became an ordinary person. The power disparity was too absurd. Now that he's considered one of their own, Bai Ye plans to send him to Kingpin for some advanced training, to get some century-old internal energy. That way, he can create a 3-foot-high energy wall like a hidden monk during battles to prevent sneak attacks. Otherwise, his weakness is too obvious. Although Bai Ye didn't know how well Kingpin's internal energy was progressing, 7 days had passed, and given Kingpin's efficiency, Bai Ye had no doubt that he had accumulated 100 or 200 years' worth of internal energy. At this moment, Bai Ye had just joined the Brotherhood of Mutants and was already assigning them tasks as if they were his own home, but Magneto didn't mind at all and was happy to accept. As long as it improves the mutants' living conditions, what's wrong with Bai Ye being the leader? If he wanted to enjoy himself, he had plenty of options. Why would he bother causing trouble every day? Magneto asked. "So what are you planning to do next?" Bai Ye smiled. "Of course, I'll go back to my factory and continue training for the rise of mutants. You just need to be patient for a year or two until I'm fully grown. As for the fact that I'm a mutant, I don't want the human government to know, to avoid unnecessary trouble." Bai Ye glanced at the group, then looked at Rogue beside him and said, "Let's go. Leave with me. You'll be staying at my house from now on." "Okay," Rogue nodded, and the next moment he was put into Bai Ye's ethereal space. This meeting was very pleasant. "If you have any trouble, feel free to contact me. I'll head back now." Bai Ye bid farewell to the group, then leaped up after creating a safe distance between them. Boom! A massive shockwave shot into the sky, forcing the group to squint and stagger. Looking up, they saw a 2-meter-deep crater in the ground, and a large hole in the ceiling, letting in warm sunlight. Meanwhile, Bai Ye had already stored his car, which he was driving on the island, into his virtual space, and, relying on his superior physical abilities, began racing across the sea. Chapter 65 Smith's Narrative. At dusk, on a cruise ship off the coast of New York, several young men and women were partying together. One of them, gazing into the distance, suddenly exclaimed in confusion, "Hey, look! Something looks like something's happened over there. Did a bomb explode?" Hearing bomb, the others followed their companion's gaze and indeed, in the distance, waves were crashing wildly, like mines exploding. But what terrified them even more was that the crashing waves were hurtling towards them at breakneck speed. Boom! 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 On the calm sea, Bai Ye's right leg slammed into the water. The immense recoil propelled him away as if by teleportation, crashing through the wind and reappearing 70 or 80 meters away. Where Bai Ye had been standing, the seawater, under pressure, surged skyward, creating waves several meters high. With his body stomping on the water at such a high frequency, moving at supersonic speed, the seawater, incredibly soft to ordinary people, felt like flat ground beneath his feet, carrying him forward relentlessly. This was the first time Bai Ye had unleashed his inner power so freely. After storing his phone and clothes in his ethereal space, he sped across the sea without any worries. Noticing the cruise ship in the distance, Bai Ye paid it no mind. At his current speed, which was close to the speed of sound, those people could only catch a glimpse of his movement, but couldn't make out his face. In a mere instant, Bai Ye's figure swept past the cruise ship and ran towards the shore, covering more than 1,000 meters and disappearing in 3 seconds. The terrified young men and women on the cruise ship were completely unaware that someone had just passed by. The sound effects like depth charges kept ringing in their ears, accompanied by the gale and the churning seawater, making it impossible for them to even open their eyes. 3 minutes later, Bai Ye returned to the vicinity of his factory. After taking out his clothes from his ethereal space and putting them on, Bai Ye opened his space and released Little Mischief. Little Rogue, who had been floating in the weightless void for a few minutes, was brought out and saw Bai Ye smiling, saying, "We're back in New York. Let me show you around the factory, where you'll train, okay, Mr. Bai?" Little Rogue nodded vigorously, now completely trusting Bai Ye. "Boss, you're back." Inside the factory, Smith greeted Bai Ye upon seeing him. "This is Smith, currently working for me," Bai Ye introduced them. "This is Mary, also a mutant. She'll be living with me from now on. Tomorrow, buy a few hundred lab rats for her to practice her abilities." "Oh, okay," Smith nodded, showing little prejudice against Little Rogue's mutant status. After all, he initially mistook Bai Ye for a mutant, and even now, he still thought Camilla was a mutant with a physical defect who couldn't be exposed to sunlight. But what will Camilla say about bringing such a beautiful young girl home like this? Smith thought to himself without revealing his thoughts. As an employee, it was best not to meddle in his boss's love life. "Start the machines now," Bai Ye said, feeling another wound on his ankle torn open by the power surge. He needed to quickly increase his physique by 0.1 and refresh his physical condition to offset the negative effects. "But, if I let Camilla bite me and turn me into a vampire, can I directly refresh the negative effects like fear of light and garlic by increasing my physique?" Bai Ye wondered. If that were possible, there would be a lot of room for maneuver. Suppressing this thought, Bai Ye began to fully immerse himself in his training. Soon, to Xiao Teoki's astonishment, the steel behind him crushed Bai Ye's back and ankles with 40 or 50 tons of pressure. Then, a powerful electric current, visible to the naked eye, flashed across Bai Ye's body. He then began deadlifting an 80-ton block of iron. Boom boom boom, crackling crackling, creaking crackling, various sounds echoed in the empty factory. Soon, wisps of white smoke began to rise from Bai Ye's body. This was the result of his flesh being burned to 200 or 300 degrees Celsius by the electric current. "Mr. Bai, is this how you usually train?" Little Rascal looked at Bai Ye, who remained expressionless throughout, and couldn't help but ask Smith, who was operating the machine beside him. "Not really, this equipment only arrived a week ago," Smith said with a look of reminiscence. "In fact, I haven't even known the boss for a month, can you imagine? A month ago, the boss was just a skinny kid who couldn't even beat me." Smith couldn't help but scratch his head. Why did it feel like so much time had passed, even though only a month had gone by? "Couldn't even beat you?" Little Rascal subconsciously sized up Smith standing beside him. He should just be an ordinary person. "Yet, I remember the first day we met, the boss was paralyzed from training and couldn't even walk. Then on the third day, he broke all the world records for ordinary humans. On the sixth day, he single-handedly took down 7 armed bank robbers. On the 8th day, he beat up a superhero called the Punisher who came knocking on his door. On the 19th day, he killed thousands of infected people controlled by mutants. Only then was this device built. And today is the 28th day since I met the boss." Smith's expression became increasingly strange as he spoke. Thinking about it carefully, it did seem quite outrageous. It had only been less than a month, yet so much had happened. And this was only a month. What if it were 2 months? Half a year? A year? He didn't even dare to imagine what would happen next. Little Rascal was completely stunned. If what Smith said was true, it was too exaggerated. Bai Ye was practically a Superman. Bai Ye heard every word of their conversation, and under the terrifying machine's operation, Bai Ye's physique began to gradually approach 3.2. It was estimated that after another 22 hours of training, he would be able to improve. Leaving aside the monotonous training regimen at White Knight's place, things were quite different for Peter. On the streets of New York City, Peter Parker, clad in his classic red and blue battlesuit, was frantically swinging on spiderwebs from skyscrapers. Behind him, a 2.5-meter-tall lizard man in a white lab coat, covered in green scales, was climbing the buildings, chasing after him. Along the way, the lizard man roared, its hard claws digging into the walls. Supported by terrifying power, the solid wall seemed to split open like tofu, hurtling towards Peter. Chapter 66 Dr. Lizard. Damn it, damn it, damn it, Peter Parker muttered incessantly, trying to shake off the relentless pursuer with his webs. The two, moving effortlessly between the skyscrapers, attracted the attention of New Yorkers below. This whole affair began when he joined the Osborn Corporation. After securing an internship at Osborn, he naturally met Curt Connors, a researcher there. Especially after learning that his father, who had died young, had been Dr. Connors' partner, he entrusted Connors with a set of equations left behind by his father, helping the latter overcome his experimental bottleneck. Then, a few days later, he witnessed Dr. Connors, forced by Osborn to experiment on himself, transform into a gigantic, lizard monster. "Run away, Bug," Connors growled, his right hand plunging into the wall, tearing off a large section and hurling it at Peter. In an instant, Peter's spider sense kicked in. He yanked on the spider silk in his hand, dodging the stone wall. But seeing the wall crashing down into the screaming crowd below, he knew he was in trouble. He quickly stopped running, rapidly pressing the spider silk launcher on his wrist, successfully suspending the wall in midair. "Got you!" Before Peter could even catch his breath, the lizardman leaped high into the air, slamming into Peter's back and instantly pinning him to the ground. The lizardman's left hand, like a steel claw, grabbed Peter's red and blue bodysuit and ripped it open, leaving 3 bloody gashes. His right hand aimed for Peter's eyes, but Peter's right hand held it firmly. With the overwhelming advantage of strength, the lizardman's claw slowly approached Peter's eyes, about to pierce his brain. A feeling of weakness washed over him, as if the serum's effects were wearing off. Taking advantage of Dr. Lizard's weakened state, Peter quickly kicked him to the ground, then immediately shot out a web and disappeared into the city. In the distance, the sirens of police cars gradually sounded. Dr. Lizard, watching the vanished Spider-Man, angrily exhaled, then was drawn to something lying on the ground. Looking at the work badge he had just torn and dropped, a cold glint flashed in Dr. Lizard's eyes. "That spider was you, Peter Parker. You are your father's final achievement." Putting away the certificate, Dr. Lizard, before the effects of the drug wore off, vanished into the sewers before the police cars arrived. That night, Peter crawled into his room in agony, threw off his suit, and stared at the huge gash running from his chest to his abdomen in the mirror, wincing in pain. The pain reminded him of how he had beaten Bai Ye to pulp during training. Did that guy feel pain? Taking out his phone, Peter dialed Bai Ye's number. In the newly purchased villa, Bai Ye was on the bed, embracing Camilla and about to invite her to play cards, when the phone hanging beside him rang. Gently covering Camilla's lips as she leaned in for a kiss, Bai Ye picked up the phone and saw the caller ID was Spider-Man. "Why are you calling so late?" he answered casually, his tone somewhat cold. "Hello, what's up? Why are you calling me so late?" "Bai, I personally caused the birth of a monster." Peter Parker gripped the phone, recounting the whole story and requesting Bai Ye's help. After listening to the whole ordeal, looking at Camilla's flirtatious eyes, Bai Ye pondered for a moment and said, "You want my help? We'll need to find out where that doctor is first. Do you know his whereabouts?" No, but I know the doctor's house. I think we can find him there," Peter Parker said thoughtfully. "My time is precious. Call me again after you find the person," Bai Ye said, hanging up the phone and looking at Camilla nestled against his chest. He'd spent the entire day exercising, playing cards with Camilla in bed, occasionally calling Gwen to check on their relationship, and Kingpin sometimes calling to update him on the book's progress. He was too busy to help Peter find the person. He'd wait until he found him. Looking at Camilla, Bai Ye's lips curled slightly. "I just awakened my superpowers today. I think we can change our game a little tonight." "A new game?" Camilla blushed and covered her mouth. Meanwhile, Peter, holding the phone that had been hung up, felt the pain from his wound and forced a smile. I can't let things escalate any further. Looks like I have to take a day off tomorrow to find Dr. Connors. Maybe we can still salvage the situation, Peter planned. The next day, after a night of storms inside the small building, Bai Ye looked at his muscular body, covered in scars from his rampaged abilities, in the mirror and sighed softly, reminding himself, women have ruined me like this. Bai Ye, I can't go on like this anymore. From today onwards, I must abstain from lust. Just then, his phone rang. He thought it was Peter calling, but glancing down at the contact's name, he saw it was the director's little cotton-padded jacket. Hey, Gwen, I remember you should still be in class right now, right? How come you have time at this hour? Bai Ye dismissed his thoughts about abstaining from lust and said with a smile, but Gwen's somewhat panicked voice came from the other end of the line. Bai Ye, a giant monster that looks like a lizard just ran out of the school and is now searching for people everywhere. Boom. 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 Gwen spoke into the phone, hearing the continuous booming sounds coming from Bai Ye's end. Worried, she asked, Bai, is something wrong with you too? I'm fine here. Where are you at school? I'm coming to find you, Bai Ye said calmly, his figure already blurring into a blur, moving forward amidst the exploding air. My classmates and I are in the library. Okay, 3 minutes, no, just 2 minutes, and I'll be there. Just stay put, Bai Ye said, not hanging up, keeping the call going. He knew that Gwen needed security most in this crisis, so he used his inner strength to protect the phone from damage while rushing towards the school at a speed invisible to the naked eye. Meanwhile, inside the library of Midtown High School, to everyone's terrified gaze, a giant bone claw easily tore open the heavy door. Then a huge head poked its head in, staring intently at everyone in the building with annoyed eyes. Chapter 67 Crushing Victory. A terrified scream instantly echoed throughout the library as a grotesque, scaly head peered in through the door. Dozens of people hiding inside fled in panic, while Dr. Lizard's eyes scanned everyone present. Where is Peter Parker? Dr. Lizard's eyes didn't find the familiar figure. The next moment, his body slammed into the wall like a tank, then he leaped high and grabbed a fleeing student. Let me go. Even though Dr. Lizard hadn't used much force, several of the students' bones shattered, and the excruciating pain caused him to faint. Seeing the unconscious student, Dr. Lizard tossed him aside and grabbed another student, demanding, I'm asking you, where is Peter Parker? Who is Peter Parker? I don't know him, the student screamed in agony. There was only one exit in the entire library. Looking at the massive figure blocking the door, everyone trembled, afraid to utter a sound. Bai Ye was still on his way, listening to the constant chatter on his phone. Has that monster broken into the library? Wait for me a bit, I'll be right there. How long is right there? A girl next to Gwen couldn't help but ask, hearing Bai Ye's voice. And that monster keeps grabbing people and asking who Peter Parker is. So who exactly is Peter Parker? Why is this lizard-like guy looking for him? Who is Peter Parker? That's a good question. Even while on his way, Bai Ye couldn't help but laugh out loud. It was just too funny. Gwen, hiding behind a bookshelf, watched the lizard monster wreaking havoc in the library and said, that monster is coming this way. How much longer will it take you to get there? How much longer? Probably 3, Bai Ye said in a heavy tone. 3 minutes, everyone surrounding Gwen thought in fear. In less than a minute, the lizard monster would be here and tear them to pieces. 2, Bai Ye said slowly, leaving everyone speechless. No need for a countdown at a time like this. 1, as the last number was uttered by Bai Ye, a deafening roar erupted. The south wall of the library shattered instantly, creating a 3-meter diameter hole. A figure, just like the lizardman, smashed through the wall and flew in. Bai Ye, arriving at the scene, hung up the phone with a beep, and, meeting everyone's gaze, smiled at Gwen, saying, I told you, I'm punctual, it's you. The lizard doctor's expression turned serious as he watched the boy's previously agitated demeanor. Due to the media's reach, he had also heard of Bai Ye's videos. Oh, you've heard of me. Bai Ye slowly walked towards the lizard doctor. Then you should know that Midtown High School is my school. I just want to find Peter Parker. Watching the boy slowly approach, the lizard doctor's refined demeanor gained the upper hand, and he began to defend himself. After all, he didn't have the confidence to defeat the boy before him. This seemingly submissive demeanor left the others present speechless, thinking that the change in attitude was too rapid. making it hard to reconcile with the lizardman's previous manic behavior. Wanting to find Peter Parker? That's your confession before you went to jail, huh? Bai Ye stopped in front of Dr. Lizard, his expression incredibly relaxed. Since obtaining the attribute panel, he had trained diligently for a full 30 days. If he couldn't even defeat Dr. Lizard in front of him, it would be a huge waste of his hard work and extraordinary talent. On his way here, he noticed someone filming behind him, so he didn't attack directly, intending to let the lizardman make the first move. Don't force me. Seeing Bai Ye's aggressive demeanor, Dr. Lizard's ferocity gradually surfaced, his eyes filled with murderous intent. Force you? Please, you're breaking the law, buddy, Bai Ye said, his tone incredibly irritating, finally fully unleashing Dr. Lizard's ferocity, his giant claw swinging towards Bai Ye. But in the next instant, a flash of purple light appeared, and Dr. Lizard's entire right arm was severed at the root. Before he could react, the intense pain of the severed arm surged into his brain. Hey, everyone saw it. He attacked first, Bai Ye said, glancing at the attribute panel out of the corner of his eye. Description: you have been detected attacking another person. Data collected on your opponent. Name: Curtis Kurt Connors. Strength: 3.1 agility, 2.5 constitution, 4.3 spirit, 2.3 charisma, 0.5. The pain from his severed arm completely ignited Dr. Lizard's ferocity. He opened his blood-red maw and roared at Bai Ye. Roar! In the instant he opened his mouth, Bai Ye's fist tore through the air, striking Dr. Lizard's jaw with full force, forcibly silencing his roar. The powerful upward force also pierced his brain, shattering his jaw. Like being hit by a speeding train, Dr. Lizard's body was thrown high into the air, flying 3 meters before crashing to the ground, leaving a noticeable crack in the wooden floor. In just a moment, the two, whose strength was similar but whose agility differed greatly, effortlessly determined who was superior. I must escape, or I will die here, Dr. Lizard thought to himself, enduring the pain as he got up to leave. Seeing that his opponent not only refused to surrender but also dared to run away, Bai Ye's body instantly blurred into a blur, blocking his path. He braced his left foot on the ground, his right leg poised to deliver a powerful kick. In that instant, Dr. Lizard's eyes narrowed to pinpoints as he watched Bai Ye prepare to strike. His animalistic instincts even detected the scent of death. Wait, I surrender, too late. My ultimate technique diagram is already prepared. After defeating him, Bai Ye's eyes were icy cold as he unleashed the power of hundreds of tons of force from his right leg. The moment the kick struck Dr. Lizard's abdomen, blood mixed with a supersonic shockwave ripped away the surrounding books, and Dr. Lizard's figure was propelled by the immense force, shooting forward instantly. Boom. 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 After 3 consecutive booms, Dr. Lizard's body crashed through the library wall. After flying several meters through the air, he slammed into the ground, creating a large, cracked crater. At the point of impact in his abdomen, a massive, gaping wound appeared, his internal organs shattered into pieces. HMPH, you've come to understand pain a little better now, haven't you? Bai Ye's gaze pierced through the wall as he looked at the unconscious, massive figure, and he spoke calmly. At Bai Ye's ankles, his trousers were torn to shreds from the force of his earlier kick. Chapter 68 SHIELD. Cold. Pain. Lying on the cold floor of Midtown High School's playground, Dr. Connors felt excruciating pain around his abdomen. As for the abdomen itself, his intestines were scattered on the road, there was nothing there, so how could he feel pain? With a light leap, Bai Ye crossed the distance of more than 10 meters from the library and jumped to Dr. Lizard's side. Looking at the one-armed man who had recovered his normal human form after his internal organs were healed, Bai Ye silently thought, actually, with my current strength, I'm already good enough to live in the Marvel Universe, right? Hundreds of tons of strength, Mach 1 movement speed, skin that could withstand heavy machine guns, extraordinary immortality, the special ability of etherealization, all of these qualities, embodied in Bai Ye, should allow him to live quite well in most situations within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as long as he doesn't get involved in other things. Looking at the unconscious man in front of him, Bai Ye took out his phone, thought for a moment, and then dialed a number. Hello, General Ross? Yes, it's me, Bai Ye. Bai Ye. Inside the experimental base, Ross watched his sergeants training soldiers and asked, why did you suddenly want to call me? Did I invite you to dinner last week and you refused? I've been too busy, so I haven't had time. Now I've found a good experimental subject, and I've already subdued him. You can come and take over. Remember to send me a copy of the experimental results later, Bai Ye said with a smile. A good experimental subject, Ross asked with interest, a cigarette dangling from his lips. How good? This subject is a core developer of Osborn's biological experimental project. Because of Osborn's coercion, he conducted human experiments on himself and became a lizardman with normal intelligence but an extreme personality. If the side effects are removed, I feel he's much stronger than the super soldier serum you're currently developing, Bai Ye said with a smile. Osborn's experimental project? Good, good. Where are you now? I'll send someone over immediately, Ross said impatiently, as their research on vampires had just hit a bottleneck. Location? Right here at Midtown High School. The experimental materials suddenly attacked the school, causing some casualties, but I've managed to stop it. If we don't act quickly, the police might be here first, Bai Ye said, already hearing Ross ordering officers to move out on the phone. Hanging up the phone, Bai Ye let out a breath. Behind him, many enthusiastic students had surrounded him. Bai, do you still remember me? A student approached, greeting Bai Ye with a somewhat restrained expression. Bai Ye recognized the person at a glance. It was his former classmate, Evan. Back when Bai Ye used sulfuric acid to train his body, Evan had slapped him, revealing his health bar. However, compared to Evan's previous outgoing manner, Evan now appeared extremely restrained and somewhat humble. Evan, it hasn't even been a month. How could I forget my classmate? Bai Ye looked at the reserved Evan and gave him a light hug without any hesitation. Seeing the surprise and delight on the other's face from his small gesture, Bai Ye knew that an invisible barrier had formed between them. There was no way around it. They were from different social classes. At this moment, not only Evan, but more and more classmates gathered around, all looking at him with great enthusiasm. Bai Ye, can you sign an autograph and take a photo with me? My brother doesn't believe you're my classmate, and I want to prove it to him. Bai, I'm your fan. I've read every single one of your articles, and I've watched that video of you fighting the mutants hundreds of times. I've already pre-ordered 3 copies of the book you're releasing next month, one for my collection, one for myself, and one to give as a gift. Bai, my drain is clogged, so could you come to my house and fix it for me? Winking, as more and more people gathered around, Bai Ye maintained the elegant smile he always wore when facing the camera, casually taking a notebook and pen from a student and signing his name. But his signature speed still couldn't keep up with the number of students crowding around him. Some of the students were downright morally corrupt, occasionally reaching out to touch Bai Ye. Bai Ye could tolerate the girls, but he absolutely refused to let the boys touch him. While dealing with their enthusiasm, Bai Ye gave Gwen, who was watching him from behind the crowd, a look, signaling her to wait a moment. Gwen understood and quietly stared at him from a distance. Not long after, as the sirens blared, George, getting out of the car, looked at Bai Ye, who was surrounded by students, with a speechless expression. It's you again. Oh, the chief's here. Bai Ye stepped out of the crowd and greeted him. I've taken care of things. You can park your police cars downstairs at the teaching building. George glanced at his daughter, who was mixed in with the crowd and looking in their direction, and sighed helplessly. So, what's this time? It's just a mutated lizard attacking the school. Look, it's flying over there, Bai Ye said. Then his sharp eyes spotted a group of men in black approaching the unconscious professor. Those guys, they shouldn't be yours, right? George turned around alertly and immediately walked over, saying, Who are you? What are your identities? What do you want? Seeing the police approach, the man in the lead, with a refined demeanor, took out his badge from his pocket. Oh, I'm FBI Agent Kelson. I'm here to investigate this case. FBI. George looked at the smiling man in front of him suspiciously, but after checking his identification, he didn't find anything wrong. This is a suspect in the case. You can't just take him away. I need to ask my superiors, but Bai Ye's eyes narrowed slightly. The name Kelson reminded him of a certain organization that was always there when there was trouble. SHIELD. You must be Bai Ye. At this moment, Agent Kelson stepped forward, extending his hand to Bai Ye with a polite but distant smile. We would like to ask you to make a statement here. Do you have time? I think a statement is unnecessary. I will give the report to your director separately later. At this moment, a slightly louder voice interrupted from the side. Ross looked at Kelson with the eyes of someone looking at a black sheep. SHIELD. Cops were always there when there was trouble. As for this suspect, our military wants him, Ross looked at Kelson. Behind him, because of Bai Ye's reminder, a large number of troops had come, and their imposing presence was no less than that of SHIELD. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69 William Stryker. On the scene, seeing Ross's aggressive attitude, Kelson reluctantly took a step back and bowed his head. In Kelson's view, Ross's anger was justified. Previously, SHIELD had asked Ross to deal with the vampires, but due to incorrect intelligence, Ross's men suffered heavy losses. If he continued to be tough this time, it would be a complete breakdown in relations, and he could forget about getting Ross's help with vampires and mutants in the future. Seeing Kelson back down, Ross nodded coldly, his expression softening slightly. He waved his hand, ordering his soldiers to carry Dr. Lizard's body back. The equipment used to restrain the Hulk in the base was unusable. Since this guy was green even after transforming, they could use it to imprison him. Looking at Bai Ye, who was watching the show from the sidelines, Ross smiled with appreciation and said, "Let's go, kid. Before the media arrives, I'll treat you to dinner." You can't say you don't have time this time, can you? It has to be said that Ross was quite satisfied with Bai Ye. In the past, when he received calls from SHIELD or similar agencies, ordering him to go out and capture experimental subjects, he would either suffer heavy losses or return empty-handed. Those low-risk, high-reward operations were left to others. He never got a chance. But after meeting Bai Ye, not only did Bai Ye think of him first after seeing the materials, but he had also already packed and prepared the materials before they even arrived. Ross had never won a battle with such a favorable outcome before. Faced with his invitation, Bai Ye replied without hesitation, "Sorry, Ross, I really have something to attend to." Ross frowned, displeased. "What could be so important?" "I remember you're releasing a book next month, and you're collaborating with that gangster to promote it all over the city. Cut ties with that kind of scum. I'll introduce you to another colleague of mine later. He also wants to meet you." Bai Ye asked curiously. "Another colleague? Who?" "William Stryker, of course," Ross said with a smile. "This guy is obsessed with mutants. He says he greatly admires your pure-blooded human identity and wants to invite you to join him in fighting mutants." Bai Ye, now a mutant himself. "I didn't want to go in the first place, and now that you've said that, I don't want to go at all," Bai Ye thought helplessly. He knew, of course, how much hostility William Stryker harbored towards mutants, and that he was behind several X-Men movies. Who knew if this high-ranking official, who specifically targets mutants, was carrying any mutant detection equipment? If he ran into him and was recognized, how embarrassing would that be? "Please reject him for me. I even considered joining a mutant protection organization before, but I probably wouldn't get along with him," Bai Ye said evasively, leaving Ross speechless. Thinking of Stryker's personality, Ross sighed. "All right, kid, I'll talk to him. But what important thing do you have to do?" Bai Ye looked at George beside him and smiled. "Having dinner with a police chief's beautiful daughter is definitely more enjoyable than having dinner with you." George, who was arranging for the police to question the student, felt a chill run down his spine. Turning around, he saw Bai Ye's friendly smile. Hearing that it was for this reason, Ross said speechlessly, "What's the big deal? I, an Air Force Lieutenant General, also have a daughter. And she's single. If you'd like, I can play matchmaker for you too. Come on, next time for sure, next time for sure." Bai Ye waved his hand, and under Ross's glaring expression, he made a pigeon-toed stance, leaped up, and disappeared into the clouds before everyone's eyes. In a secluded corner, Kelson spoke into his headset. "Director, General Ross just arrived." He forcibly took the lizardman away and also turned down Bai Ye's invitation. "It's all right, let him have the lizardman. As for Bai Ye, I'll go talk to him myself," Nick said calmly. Beside Nick Fury, a large screen was playing a somewhat blurry video. It was the footage of Bai Ye's battle with the lizardman that had just circulated online. Beside him, several physicists were analyzing the forces acting on Bai Ye in the video. "It doesn't make sense," one physicist said, scratching his head in bewilderment. With his leg strength of over 300 tons and a supersonic kick, let alone his trousers, even his underwear should have been blown apart by the reaction force. His leg can go supersonic. Why are you worried about his pants? Who knows what his pants are made of? Maybe they're special engineering materials, another scientist explained. But isn't the difference in this guy's combat power too big? Compared to when he fought a vampire 9 days ago, his speed is more than twice as fast, but his strength is only about 4 times. Hiding with strength? Hiding with strength? How do you know this video shows his full power? The scientist rolled his eyes and said, maybe he just held back both times to avoid using too much force, like you said, and ripping off his underwear. That makes sense. The others nodded in agreement, while Nick Fury, who had listened the whole time, tapped his fingers lightly on the table, lost in thought. Outside the teaching building, unlike the students watching the spectacle, Gwen sat on the steps, waiting silently. The next moment, a pair of hands suddenly reached out and covered her eyes, saying in a familiar voice, "Guess who I am?" Seeing this childish behavior, Gwen gave a helpless smile, turned around, and hugged Bai Ye with concern, asking, "Daddy didn't make things difficult for you just now, did he?" "Of course not. He chatted with me for a bit and then went to do other things." Bai Ye gently put his arm around Gwen's slender waist, saying, "You know Chief George's attitude, he neither approves nor disapproves." Gwen leaned against Bai Ye's chest and then asked, "What have you been doing lately? Sometimes you don't even answer my calls." "Most of the time I've been training, but the factory has taken in a mutant," Bai Ye said casually. Because Gwen could hear the roar of the machines when she called during the day, she wasn't unaware that Bai Ye was training with the machines in the factory. A mutant? Male or female? Gwen looked up warily. Of course it's a woman, and she's quite pretty, but so far, we haven't gone beyond pure friendship, Bai Ye said. Seeing Gwen's slightly pouting lips in displeasure, Bai Ye chuckled and, amidst her gasp, swept her up in a princess carry. His inner energy then surged forth, enveloping the two of them. "Bai, what are you doing?" Gwen cried out in alarm, clinging to Bai Ye's neck. "I still owe you a movie ticket from last time, let's go now." "Lie still and don't move," Bai Ye said with a smile, then with a powerful push off the ground, he carried Gwen towards the movie theater. Chapter 70 Sentinel Project. Inside Bai Ye's factory in New York, Zio Teoki's eyes were fixed on the white mouse in her hand, writhing in agony and gradually losing its ability to resist. Hundreds of trained mice lay around her, while in the sealed box behind her, hundreds more lively mice quietly awaited their fate. Looking at the dry, lifeless mouse in her hand, Zio Teoki murmured, "The 151st one. Compared to the first one, it survived much longer. Mr. Bai was right, it seems it won't be long before I can control my absorption ability. If I can only absorb its physical strength, then I can help Mr. Bai train it." Thinking about being able to openly be close to Bai Ye in a few days, a blush rose on Zio Teoki's face, and her right hand quickly reached into the box and pulled out a mouse. Perhaps due to the fluctuation of her emotions, her control was affected. Just seconds later, the 152nd mouse was drained of its life force, dying faster than any before. Watching the white mouse die so quickly, the little rascal took a deep breath to calm himself before reaching into the box. "I never thought the world would be so different." In 2010, the Marvel Cinematic Universe still had Inception showing. Inside the movie theater, watching Leonardo DiCaprio spin atop, Gwen leaned on Bai Ye's shoulder as they quietly watched the film together. It was a weekday, so the theater was sparsely populated. However, as Bai Ye watched, he sensed something was off. Some of the moviegoers nearby had unusually strong heartbeats. Although these people looked and dressed like ordinary people, to Bai Ye's ears, each heartbeat was steady and powerful, almost like that of athletes. Thinking of a possibility, Bai Ye narrowed his eyes slightly. He rarely went out to watch a movie. Being interrupted would be a death sentence. Fortunately, the other party remained quiet throughout the entire film and didn't cause any trouble even after Bai Ye left the theater. "Chief, aren't we following them?" an agent asked, watching Bai Ye and Gwen skip away, hand in hand. "I'm here for an exchange, not to offend anyone." "There's absolutely no need to get involved at this time," Nick Fury said calmly. Without the agent's interference, Bai Ye spent the entire morning playing with Gwen, from the movie theater to the amusement park, kissing, hugging, and lifting her up along the way, gradually increasing their understanding. At noon, Bai Ye glanced at the sky and said, "It's getting late, I'll take you home first." "Go home," Gwen said reluctantly. "Don't you want to play a little longer? Today's entertainment time has already seriously exceeded the limit. I need to go back and train. If you want to play, we can make an appointment next time." Bai Ye said. Tonight, he could only cut back on the time he spent playing cards with Camilla in bed to make up for the missed training. Gently wrapping her arms around Bai Ye's neck, Gwen nodded somewhat sullenly. Then Bai Ye lifted the girl up in his arms and lightly leaped towards her home. In a military base, Stryker held the phone. Ross's voice came through. That kid Bai Ye has rejected you. He's a mutant protectionist. You two aren't compatible. A mutant protectionist? Are there any normal people who want to protect mutants these days? Stryker looked annoyed, but still said helplessly, I know, I won't go looking for him again. He hung up the phone casually and turned to ask, how is the preparation for the UN summit in New York going? His subordinate immediately handed him a document, saying, this is the list of summit participants we've compiled. Stryker flipped through the list, quickly spotting a name, Charles Xavier. I knew you'd come. Stryker smiled, shaking the list in his hand. One of the topics at the UN summit in New York a month later was related to the Mutant Registration Act. Under such circumstances, how could Professor X, who cared so much about the unity of mutants and humanity, not attend? Sure enough, Stryker only needed to check the list to be pretty close to the truth. Thinking of Professor X's psychic abilities that could influence the entire world, a burning desire flashed in Stryker's eyes. With Professor X and the replica helmet in his base, wiping out all mutants worldwide would be no problem. According to the original plot, Professor X was knocked unconscious by Mystique before the global summit, preventing him from attending and pushing Stryker's plan to exterminate mutants a year later. Arrest this mutant on his way to the UN summit. Remember, this mutant possesses extremely strong psychic abilities, but physically he's just a cripple in a wheelchair. He must be rendered unconscious before he can react. Stryker pointed to Charles's name on the list and said coldly, I want to wipe every single mutant off the face of the earth. Yes, sir, the officers behind him replied in unison, then turned to prepare for action. As the sergeants left, a sealed file folder lay quietly on Stryker's desk. The folder was titled, Sentinel Robot Mass Production Plan. The names of those responsible for the plan were listed as, Bolivar Trask, Howard Stark, Alexander Pierce, Henry Jonathan Pym, Reed Richards. Stryker's gaze fell on the folder. He carefully put the file away, stood up, and left the room. At that moment, Bai Ye was unaware of Stryker's plan. After a stylish somersault in the air, he landed smoothly with Gwen in his arms. Good afternoon. We'll talk on the phone tonight. Bai Ye gently kissed Gwen's cheek before seeing her into the house. The instant the door closed, Bai Ye vanished, appearing amidst the howling wind before a man with a head the size of a hard-boiled egg. You sent someone to follow me all the way, and then specifically staked out my girlfriend's house. So, what does the director of SHIELD want with me? Bai Ye asked Nick Fury calmly. Nick Fury wasn't surprised by Bai Ye's revelation. After all, Bai Ye and Ross had a good relationship, so it was normal for him to know him. Therefore, he said amiably, nothing, I just wanted to chat with you. Chatting is fine, but could you please have that psychologist on the other end of your headset shut up? Bai Ye stared directly at Nick Fury's forehead. Chapter 71 A Great Wizard Meets a Lesser Wizard. Bai Ye's gaze was fixed on Nick Fury, and he could clearly hear the various communication techniques suggested by the psychologist being heard by the other man. From just now, every action of mine has been analyzed meticulously. Isn't SHIELD being a bit too impolite? As soon as Bai Ye uttered his calm words, the psychologist on the other end of the earpiece, who had been talking incessantly, stopped speaking as if his throat had been choked, and the entire room fell silent. Sorry, this is a necessary preparation for important figures. After all, your threat is too strong, and we are a little afraid of you. Nick Fury took off the earpiece, his tone gentle and his posture very humble. My threat? Bai Ye scoffed. Come on, I'm a law-abiding citizen, aren't I? Robbers, vampires, lizard people, I've dealt with them all, and yet you turn around and are so wary of me. Of course, I fully believe in the legitimacy of your actions after becoming a superhero. Nick Fury smiled, and as for Bai Ye's bad deeds before he became famous, the two tacitly avoided mentioning them. I'm here because our organization wants to establish an alliance specifically for superheroes, so we wanted to ask if you're interested. I think you have a lot of potential. Oh, then I'd like to ask, who's currently in your alliance? Bai Ye raised an eyebrow and asked. Because it's just a preliminary concept, we're still in the selection phase, so currently we only have one archer from SHIELD and one well-trained female agent, Nick Fury said. Archer? Female agent. Bai Ye's lips curled up slightly, and he leaned forward slightly, exuding a sense of pressure. Just two ordinary people. Are they worthy of being in an alliance with me? Won't I have to save them if something happens? Bai Ye said. This young man is really rude. Inside SHIELD, Natasha, hearing Bai Ye's sarcasm, cut off the communication with the other end and muttered a slight complaint. The future alliance won't just have these two members. There will be many more people with unlimited potential like you joining. Nick Fury tried to salvage the situation. I remember there's an X-Men group next door, right? Why don't you consider poaching from there? They have plenty of ready-made fighters, Bai Ye said. Ross said you guys are a large international organization, but after all this time, this so-called alliance is full of ordinary people. It doesn't seem very impressive, does it? You've dragged down the whole organization's prestige. Is there anything else you wanted to talk to me about? If not, I'm leaving, Bai Ye said impatiently. He hadn't expected that he'd been called here just to talk about this, wasting so much time. The training machines in the factory were practically rusting. Boom, Nick Fury was about to speak, but the next moment, as a cloud of dust rose, Bai Ye, too lazy to pay attention to his nonsense, disappeared from the spot, leaving only the silent director. After a long while, Nick Fury sighed and said, "What a Superman. I hope he's not our future enemy." Inside the factory, Little Rogue was still holding a white mouse, experimenting with her abilities. As more and more white mice died, she found that her strength seemed to have increased significantly. It's like absorbing the energy of a dying object, permanently strengthening it. My ability is terrifying, a flicker of surprise crossed Little Rascal's eyes. The next moment, a gust of wind swept through the factory. By the time Little Rascal reacted, he saw Bai Ye already standing on the equipment, ready to start it. "Mr. Bai, you're back," Little Rascal exclaimed excitedly, then immediately recounted his discovery. "Oh, not bad, keep up the good work," Bai Ye nodded calmly, offering encouragement. "The entire Earth only has 7 billion people. Even with a 100% conversion efficiency, it wouldn't be that high. And at Little Rascal's current absorption speed, it would take an unknown amount of time to absorb enough energy to kill everyone on Earth." He had Smith, who was waiting nearby, turn on the machine. The roar echoed throughout the factory, while Bai Ye, while exercising, stared blankly at his arms. He noticed a significant deviation of tens of kilograms in his control of strength during his fight with Dr. Lizard. "Is it because of the large difference between my mental and physical attributes?" Bai Ye stared at the two attributes on the panel, which differed by about 0.5. Now, every time Bai Ye's attributes increased, he would measure his strength. His strength had increased from 2.7 to 3.2, a fourfold increase. Initially, the large difference between his constitution and strength caused his body to be unable to withstand the exertion. Now, all his available attribute points were allocated to strength and constitution, leaving his mental attributes lagging behind. Mental attributes represent control, comprehension, focus, and endurance. The 0.5 difference in attribute points finally brought on the side effects of this significant attribute imbalance. "It seems that from now on, I must allocate all my available attribute points to mental, otherwise, I might accidentally tear Camilla apart while playing cards tonight," Bai Ye thought silently. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of Value Line Corporation in New York, Kingpin looked at the old man floating in mid-air on metal plates and a woman with blue skin, and cold sweat broke out on his brow. Kingpin almost immediately stood up from his seat, saying humbly, "What brings the renowned Magneto to a small-time gangster like myself? Is there anything I can help you with? Damn it, why is this guy here?" Kingpin cursed inwardly. Compared to a terrorist like Magneto, an anti-human force, he, an ordinary gangster, was far inferior. Kingpin was even considering calling Bai Ye for help, but Magneto looked down at the human before him and said calmly, "Bai Ye sent me. He said you have something I need here." Bai Ye. Kingpin was stunned, then felt a surge of anger. He'd never really interacted with Magneto before. What was this guy doing here? Turns out, he'd brought the terrorists here. "May I ask your relationship with Bai Ye?" Kingpin probed, trying to find out in Bai Ye's capacity as Bai Ye. An ally, Magneto slowly descended from the air, not intending to reveal Bai Ye's mutant identity. An ally, Kingpin took a deep breath. He hadn't expected Bai Ye to be able to latch onto someone like Magneto so quickly. "Looks like I'm going to have to spend a lot today," Kingpin thought to himself, then picked up the phone on the table and dialed, Gravestone, bring up container 3. There's a VIP here who needs it. Quotation mark. Chapter 72 Chameleon. Half an hour later, inside the Value Line building, Magneto sat calmly in Kingpin's original chair, waiting. On the sofa beside him, Mystique held a photocopy of the Xixia Divine Skill, studying and reciting it repeatedly. Kingpin stood by, like a subordinate, describing the abilities of the Xixia Divine Skill to Magneto. You mean this Xixia Divine Skill that Bai Ye gave you, if someone is willing to pass on the skill, can grant one the equivalent of hundreds of years of hard-earned internal energy overnight? Magneto asked in surprise. That's right. Our experiments show that everyone's internal energy capacity is different. Depending on each person's physique, the higher their talent, the more energy their dancing can hold, ranging from tens to hundreds of years, Kingpin explained. They had also dissected several bodies in recent days, and based on the internal energy circulation circuits, they had actually discovered meridians within the human body, and these were visible to the naked eye. It was said that the doctors who performed the dissections began to doubt their previous knowledge. Why hadn't anyone noticed something so obvious within the human body before? It was simply outrageous. As they spoke, Tombstone took the elevator to the top floor of the company building. Beside him stood an ordinary-looking young man. The young man had bright eyes, a ruddy complexion, and exuded an aura of boundless energy. Boss, the person is here, Tombstone said, pointing to the young man beside him. Once our esteemed guest has mastered the Purple Cloud Divine Skill, we'll prepare to transfer the power, Kingpin explained to Magneto. This is the internal energy vessel I found, storing 300 years worth of true energy within him. When Mystique learns the Purple Cloud Divine Skill, I will transfer 100 years worth of internal energy to you. 100 years, Magneto tapped the table lightly with his right hand. I want all 300 years. I'll transfer $30 million to you afterwards. Kingpin's face immediately fell, but forced by the other party's power, he reluctantly nodded in agreement. It's important to understand that there are countless billionaires on the verge of death globally. This 300 years of internal energy could have been sold for a staggering $300 million to $3 billion a month later, but now it's being sold for a paltry $30 million. Several hours later, after Mystique mastered the manual and cultivated her first trace of internal energy, she nodded to Magneto, indicating that they could begin. Soon, at Kingpin's command, the Jinchuriki containing 300 years of internal energy sat cross-legged behind Mystique, continuously transferring his internal energy to her. Hundreds of years of internal energy flowed into Mystique's body, and a layer of purple light began to emanate from their bodies. Magneto watched with great interest. Several minutes passed, and the young man who had been transferring the energy gradually dimmed his once bright eyes, as if he had been pulling all-nighters. His skin also lost its luster and became much drier. In contrast, Mystique could clearly feel her spirit and energy strengthening under the amplification of her inner energy. After transferring all her internal energy, the young man's hands hung limply at his sides, a sense of weakness washing over him, as if he had been drained dry. How was the effect? Magneto asked curiously after the transfer of energy ended. I feel full of power, I've never felt so good before, Mystique said, licking her lips. The next moment, her inner energy surged, and she swung her palm at the wall in front of her. Due to lack of control over the force, she left a foot-thick palm print on the wall from a distance. Getting up and going to the table, she picked up a bronze statue in front of the two of them and, with the infusion of inner energy, gently left a palm print on the hard bronze statue. With the addition of inner energy, both strength and speed are greatly improved, but the essence of the body remains unchanged. Without the addition of inner energy, it's just like an ordinary person, Mystique described. Is this the surprise Bai Ye was talking about? No wonder he said it would be helpful to me. Magneto's eyes were shining. Having this ability would greatly compensate for his weaknesses, significantly increasing his survival skills. Glancing at Kingpin, who had a fawning smile on his face, Magneto stood up and said, I'll transfer $100 million to your account later. I need 700 years worth of internal energy in a week. After saying this, Magneto ignored Kingpin's expression, activated his ability, and left the building with Mystique. Boss, what do we do? Tombstone asked, approaching after Magneto left. Kingpin said somewhat angrily, what else can we do? Once he transfers the $100 million, we'll use that money to buy hundreds of thousands of people in Africa to cultivate the technique, making money work for us. After saying this, he immediately took out his phone, found Bai Ye's number, and dialed it. "Hello, what's up?" Bai Ye's calm voice came from the other end of the line. "Oh, it's like this." Kingpin's face immediately lit up with a smile. "Bai Ye, why didn't you say you knew Magneto earlier? He just arrived here. As soon as I heard you recommended him, I didn't hesitate to transfer all 300 years of internal energy I had on hand to him. I even offered to let him reserve another 700 years of internal energy at cost price a week later. What do you think? If it's not enough, I can add more, that's fine," Bai Ye said indifferently, urging, "How's the equipment I had your engineering team work on? It's been a week, isn't it ready yet?" Okay. I'll go back and check on the progress. Also, the promotional work for your book has been put on the agenda. Could you cooperate with the promotional work? Kingpin asked. How can I cooperate? I mean, could you cooperate with a media promotion or something? Come out and make an appearance. After all, you wrote this book, and the promotion revolves around you, Kingpin said expectantly. Forget it, it's too much of a waste of time. I don't want to waste my time on this, Bai Ye refused. However, I might consider participating on the book's release date. That's all for now, I have something to do, I'll hang up now. Okay, you go ahead and do your work, I won't bother you anymore. Kingpin smiled like a sycophant and waited for Bai Ye to hang up before putting his phone down. Compared to their first conversation, Kingpin's tone was now so gentle it was almost obsequious, leaving Tombstone stunned. He exclaimed in surprise that his once imposing and powerful boss had suddenly become so charming and witty when facing the complete stranger, Bai Ye. Kingpin gently put the phone in his pocket, looked at Tombstone who was still in the office, and his tone immediately turned gloomy as he said, "What are you standing there for? Get back to work." Chapter 73 21 Days. Inside the factory, seeing the conversation was over, Zio Teoki took the phone from Bai Ye's ear and quietly hung up. Bai Ye, who was busy training and couldn't free his hands, asked, "By the way, how's your absorption control coming along?" Zio Teoki replied, "I've made great progress, but it might take a few more days to control it to the point where I can touch it but not absorb it." "Can you control the absorption of physical energy separately?" Bai Ye asked. The greater the physical exertion, the more obvious the improvement. He could then use electricity to train Zio Teoki's body after she finished absorbing. "Still experimenting, but I've got a clue," the girl replied truthfully. "Okay, come help me train when you can control it," Bai Ye said, looking at her slightly flushed face without speaking. Brooklyn, Manhattan. Peter Parker slowly descended from the building, draped in spider silk. "Okay, Peter Parker, all you need to do now is find Dr. Connor's location and report to Bai Ye, and this matter will be perfectly resolved," Peter Parker muttered to himself, looking towards Connor's house, but the next moment he froze. Following Peter Parker's gaze, a large group of police officers and U.S. soldiers were ransacking Connor's house. Wang Difa, Peter Parker was stunned. Had Connor's identity as the Lizard been exposed? Confused, Peter Parker changed out of his Spider-Man suit and back into casual clothes, then gently knocked on the door of Connor's house. As the door opened, he asked the police officers with a surprised expression, "Hello, may I ask what's going on inside? I'm Dr. Connor's student, here to visit him today. Your teacher has committed a crime and has been detained. We're just checking his house for any other incriminating evidence," an officer said. This wasn't a secret, the media had already investigated Connor's identity. Detained? Who detained him? Peter was bewildered. "Of course, by our good friend in the military, Bai Ye," the soldier said proudly. After all, Bai Ye knew Ross, so Peter Parker was practically an acquaintance of Bai Ye. What military friends? According to my inside information, Bai Ye is clearly our chief's daughter's boyfriend, an officer said, arms crossed. Bullshit. Our superior clearly said he's very fond of Bai Ye and plans to match him with his daughter. Your chief can go cool off somewhere else, a soldier retorted. Peter Parker stared blankly at the military and police exchanging insults, his heart filled with mixed feelings. How come Bai Ye had already defeated the Lizardman before he even had a chance to help? As the military and police were talking, they casually asked Peter Parker, "By the way, what's your name? If there's nothing else, you can go back." "Yes, officer, my name is Peter Parker," Peter said, turning to turn around, but the next moment two hands grabbed his shoulders. Turning around, he saw the two men looking at him strangely. "Could you repeat your name?" "My name is Peter Parker." "Is there a problem?" Peter looked a little guilty, wondering what was wrong with his name. The soldier and officer exchanged glances before looking at Peter and saying in unison, "Peter Parker, is that you? You'll have to come with us, your teacher misses you terribly, Peter." For the next period, Bai Ye had a very leisurely time, undisturbed by anything strange. Even Peter hadn't been seen for several days, allowing him to fully immerse himself in training. A day later, after killing over 2,000 mice, Little Rascal successfully achieved a state where he wouldn't absorb energy even upon physical contact. 3 days later, the equipment previously modified by Kingpin's team was officially completed. The high-frequency hydraulic press, capable of operating at 10 times per second and a maximum of 5,000 tons per cycle, was officially put into use by Bai Ye. 5 days later, after draining over 7,000 mice, Little Rascal, whose physical abilities had increased tenfold, was now able to control himself to absorb only physical energy, and Bai Ye officially added him to his training regimen. Then, the girl, due to her first time being so intimately close to her idol, lost control of her emotions and made a mistake during the energy absorption process. 7 days later, Kingpin's new book promotion officially began. People throughout New York, and even across America, could see advertisements for White Knight's new book simply by turning on their televisions. Campaign banners were plastered all over New York, including photoshopped images of White Knight and Kingpin together. During this time, White Knight, just as he had told Kingpin on the phone, didn't get involved in anything. Aside from playing cards with Camilla every night, spending his days with Rogue to absorb energy, and taking half a day each week to go out with Gwen and do everything except home run, he devoted the rest of his time to training. Then, under White Knight's intense training, 21 days passed in the blink of an eye. Boom, boom, boom. Inside Kingpin's newly built factory, White Knight was bound to a huge platform by massive alloy steel pillars. Thousands of tons of pressure passed through his back, each strike causing visible trauma to his muscle tissue. Simultaneously, tens of thousands of volts of high-voltage electricity visited every cell in his body. The high temperatures generated by the electric shock could cause his cells to die at any moment, but they would instantly recover thanks to his powerful self-healing ability. 7 meters away from Bai Ye, a huge tempered glass enclosure separated him from the outside world. Outside the glass, Smith and Little Rascal marveled at the various data. Little Rascal, in particular, only understood Smith's earlier statement after joining Bai Ye's training team. Just like Smith, he had watched Bai Ye grow stronger step by step. "Smith, go change the TV channel," Bai Ye's voice came from inside the factory. "Okay, boss," Smith quickly replied, then picked up the remote and pressed a button. The next moment, in Bai Ye's eyes, the TV program several meters away had changed to a news program. Although Bai Ye had completely adapted to the pain of training, there was no need to focus all his attention on physical exercise. In front of Bai Ye were 10 television sets, all displaying content ranging from scientific knowledge to world news. Meanwhile, Bai Ye, while exercising, used his spare time to learn some simple knowledge and gain insights into the world, making use of his increasingly overclocked brain. However, when he turned his attention to the television news, a newly emerging piece of information caught his attention. Chapter 74 Power Rolling. A cosmic storm will pass through Earth's orbit in a few weeks. A team of scientists will then travel to outer space in a spaceship to study this storm. Is the Fantastic Four storyline about to begin? Watching the television broadcast, Bai Ye smiled slightly. It seemed the era of superheroes was about to arrive, with superheroes appearing like a geyser. How could I be absent from something like this cosmic storm? Bai Ye smiled and gently released the weight in his hands. The massive steel pillar slammed to the ground under immense gravity, creating a gust of wind. He gently placed his free right hand behind his back. The massive steel pillar, weighing thousands of tons, slammed against Bai Ye's palm, unable to advance an inch, only trembling as it continued to exert pressure. Smith, observing Bai Ye's actions outside, immediately waved and said, "Shut down the equipment immediately." Yes, several equipment operators responded and then began to shut down the equipment. Because the equipment needed for Bai Ye's training was becoming increasingly large, Smith and Rogue alone couldn't operate it, so Bai Ye asked Kingpin for several operators. After paying each of these individuals an annual salary ranging from 400,000 to 1 million, the equipment operators signed confidentiality agreements with Bai Ye. The agreement stipulated that they would work for Bai Ye for a year, during which time their food, clothing, and lodging would be provided within the factory, and they were forbidden from contacting the outside world in any way. This temporarily resolved the confidentiality issue. Of course, on the day the agreements were signed, Bai Ye spoke with each of them individually. He assured them that if they violated the rules, it wouldn't matter. After all, a kind person like him would only have the person who leaked the secret and their entire family reunited, not even the extermination of their entire clan. Sure enough, his gentle words had an immediate effect. None of those who witnessed Bai Ye's training expressed dissatisfaction with the contract, and all swore to keep his secret. As the roar of the exercise machine gradually subsided, Bai Ye unplugged the thick cables attached to his body, slowly stepped off the machine, and subconsciously glanced at his attribute panel. Name: Bai Ye. Lifespan: 18/200W. Strength: 3.8 plus 0.4, single arm strength 2500 tons, movement speed Mach 4, constitution: 3.9 plus 0.4, purple cloud divine art cultivation speed: 5 strands of internal energy per second, currently possessing 700 years of internal energy, spirit: 3.8 plus 0.3 charisma, 1.4 plus unused attribute points, 0.1. Strength is increasing too quickly, I need to control the training intensity, Bai Ye thought to himself, looking at the values on the attribute panel. During this period, noticing that a low spirit attribute might lead to an inability to control the force of his attacks, Bai Ye intentionally reduced his strength training and increased his spirit training significantly. He hoped the other two attributes could wait for the spirit attribute, so he even put all his newly acquired unused attribute points into spirit, trying to achieve a balance among the three. Unfortunately, even with his best efforts, his strength seemed to snowball, increasing wildly. He had previously thought that reaching 400 tons a month would be quite good, but the increase in strength seemed unstoppable. Bai Ye even discovered that even without training, his daily life allowed him to gain several hundred kilograms of strength each day. His strength was expanding wildly like compound interest. If he hadn't intentionally suppressed it, his strength could probably have increased 4 or 5 times more, which would have been truly uncontrollable. Gently stretching his body, feeling the muscles churning like steel, Bai Ye took the clothes handed to him by Smith. You don't need to work tomorrow, I'll give you a day off. You've worked hard as a sparring partner for over a month, Bai Ye patted Smith's shoulder. No training tomorrow? Smith asked, puzzled. Yes, I'm attending my book launch tomorrow. Kingpin has been talking about it a lot lately, insisting I go, saying many celebrities will be there, Bai Ye said with a smile, though he wasn't really keen on going. Celebrities? That's because they don't know how strong you are now, boss, Smith laughed. He felt that meeting Bai Ye was the luckiest thing that had ever happened to him. As long as he stuck with Bai Ye, soaring to great heights was only a matter of time. Mr. Bai, if you're free tomorrow night, I have 2 movie tickets here. Shall we go see a movie together? Little Rascal approached, her left hand behind her back, her right hand pulling out 2 movie tickets, mustering her courage. I've already seen this movie, I don't really want to see it again. Bai Ye took the tickets from her, looking at the title Inception, and hesitated, but if it's another movie, I can accept it. Really? Little Rascal exclaimed excitedly. Yes, let's see. Flipped. Bai Ye gently patted Little Rascal's head, and then, in her emotional excitement, the girl uncontrollably began to drain his life force. Sorry, Mr. Bai, I couldn't control myself again. Little Rascal quickly held her breath, trying to control her heart rate, but the next moment she felt Bai Ye gently cup her cheek. Feeling her heart pounding, Little Rascal's eyes darted away, looking at Bai Ye's approaching face. Too close. The Little Rascal's breathing became slightly rapid, and his previously restrained absorption ability began to run rampant like a wild horse. It's alright, I can let you absorb for a long time now. Bai Ye smiled and released his hand, watching the other person lower his head and remain silent. He turned around happily to leave. Bai Ye crouched down, his body entering ethereal mode. At this moment, the ethereal space expanded to twice its original size on each side, reaching 666. Storing his body within the ethereal space, Bai Ye slammed his right leg against the edge of the ethereal space wall. The reaction force from the solid wall propelled his body forward at supersonic speed. In that instant, Bai Ye's body returned to reality. A sonic barrier instantly formed around him, and his physical body vanished from the spot. After a gust of wind, the spot where he had been standing remained undamaged. This was a small application of his ethereal ability. After more than 20 days of use, he could divide the ethereal space, using one side to store items and the other as a stepping stone for running. Late at night, in the villa, Stark climbed off the woman, and Jarvis's voice rang in his ears. "Sir, we have received an invitation from Value Line Corporation. Miss Potts is asking if you would like to attend." Chapter 75 Invitation. Faced with Jarvis's question, Tony Stark said, "Value Line Corporation? Where did this come from? Why should I accept his invitation? It's a company under Wilson Grant Fisker. He's running for mayor of New York City, and according to the investigation, he's the biggest mob boss in the entire United States," Jarvis said. "Oh, okay, a mob boss. What does that have to do with me? Does it mean our company's arms business is open to them too?" Stark asked suspiciously. Jarvis said steadily, "No, according to the invitation, it's like Columbus discovering the New World. Their company has discovered a secret to immortality within the human body, and at tomorrow's press conference, he'll randomly select a lucky person to share the secret to longevity with for free, not only us, but major media outlets worldwide, as well as the military and political circles across the U.S., and even the heads of major corporations have all been invited." Listening to Jarvis's description, Tony Stark increasingly felt this was unreliable. Is his Value Line Corporation some kind of super biological company? Otherwise, how could they have achieved such results? "No, sir, according to their advertising, the secret to longevity is in a book. As long as you study it step by step, you can live to be 100 years old and have enhanced virility." Enhanced virility. Upon hearing the aphrodisiac effect, Stark still felt it was unreliable, but he had already decided to attend. After all, how could he, the well-known playboy of America, miss such an interesting event? "Jarvis, send me all the information about tomorrow's press conference. I want to go and check it out myself," Stark said, and a dense array of information was presented to him. While browsing the materials, Stark noticed a name that appeared very frequently, Bai Ye. An Asian. Soon after seeing what Bai Ye had done since his debut, Stark exclaimed, "My God, that's just like me. Exactly as handsome as when I was young, Jarvis." Soon after learning more, he slapped his thigh and said, "Jarvis, accept that company's invitation for me. Also, end your Hawaii vacation now and go back to New York. I'm going there tomorrow to see for myself. I have 2 invitations from Value Line Corporation." "Who's coming with me?" Inside the Mutant Academy, Professor X held 2 bills in his hand. "Professor, what are we going there for? You really believe that company and Bai Ye have discovered a secret to immortality? That's just a self-aggrandizing personal biography," Cyclops said, arms crossed, leaning against the door, annoyed. Because the Institute for the Study of Mutants is located near New York, and Kingpin's propaganda is ubiquitous throughout the city, it would be strange if anyone didn't know about it. "But Professor, how come you have an invitation? Did Bai Ye send it to you?" Jean Grey asked curiously. "Eric gave it to me, and it's that kid's achievement. I had to go see it," Professor X replied with a smile, very pleased with Bai Ye. Just a few days ago, he had also discovered Bai Ye's mutant identity through telepathy. Although Bai Ye had detected his telepathic abilities instantly and cursed that if he discovered anything like that again, he would personally go to the Institute for the Study of Mutants and have Cyclops give Professor X a good thrashing. Regardless of how Bai Ye became a mutant, the fact that Bai Ye was a mutant was enough to make him very happy. He had a feeling that Bai Ye would become the link between humans and mutants in the future. "Magneto gave it to you. That guy Bai Ye really did contact him. This is definitely a Brotherhood conspiracy." Cyclops was as excited as if he'd seen Hosea, the Taoist master. Seeing his excited expression, Professor X could only look at Jean Grey and say, "Jean, then come with me." Feeling her boyfriend was a bit embarrassing, Jean Grey nodded helplessly. On the top floor of Value Line Corporation, Kingpin took a puff of his cigar and said, "The invitations have all been sent out, right? Who will be attending? Thanks to our vigorous promotion, those who have agreed to attend include the current president and vice president, mayors and governors from some states, the president of Stark Industries, and reporters from major media outlets." His subordinates answered like reciting a menu, each person he mentioned a powerful figure capable of stirring up trouble. "Also, as you instructed, boss, we randomly allocated 30 slots throughout the city. They were quickly snapped up by several unknown forces, but we don't know who they are yet. We'll have to wait until tomorrow to enter with tickets." "Very good. Remember, When randomly drawing slots for the skill transfer tomorrow, the candidate must be the one initially chosen. Kingpin tapped the railing repeatedly as he spoke. But, if it's that person, they might not agree. After all, if something happens, the impact will be too great, his subordinate whispered. Seeing his subordinate contradict him, Kingpin frowned. It's all about having a big impact. Don't worry, I've already contacted them beforehand, they'll cooperate with me. Realizing his overstepping, the subordinate quickly backed down, saying, yes, I was being nosy. At the same time, at SHIELD, Nick Fury looked at Kelson and said, tomorrow is White Knight's new book launch. I managed to get 2 random slots from them. Come with me, director, isn't that unnecessary? It's just a book launch, Hawkeye said from the side. The book itself isn't important, it's just an ordinary autobiography. The key is the people who are coming, Nick Fury said speechlessly. Too many important figures are showing up. If someone were to carry out an assassination there, it could directly impact the world order. I just don't understand why so many people are coming to what is just an ordinary autobiography. How much of a kickback did Kingpin pay? Hill said. Those people aren't there for Kingpin, but for Bai Ye's reputation, Nick Fury said. If you were like Bai Ye, with personal combat power that could influence the course of a battle, you could invite people, and they would give you face. Hearing Fury say this, everyone fell silent helplessly. What he said made perfect sense. Not only the upper class, but also, thanks to Kingpin's efforts, tomorrow's entire book signing event will be broadcast live to the public. Anyone can watch it by simply turning on a computer. They even proclaimed that Bai Ye's autobiography, Everyone Has a Skill to Practice, is a groundbreaking book that surpasses the Bible and the Quran. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.